Yeah. You can take a picture of it if you'd like.
That's a good idea.
Mayor, can you hear me? I wonder if you can hear me. I'll just text him. Okay. Well, we can't get the slideshow to go over to the right screen.
Are we ready, Erin? Yes, ma'am.
How are you feeling?
Mayor, can you hear me? He can't hear me. Still no audio. Okay, here.
Welcome everybody tonight for our special work session. We are super excited to welcome Ron Campbell to our City Council. So he was elected at a special meeting last week. So our judge, unfortunately, is not able to be here. She had a last minute emergency. But luckily, Gretchen, where did she go? Okay, you moved on me. Gretchen Homer, one of our notaries, is able to fill in. So if you want to go ahead and come up along with Ron.
Okay, Ron Campbell, will you please raise your right hand and repeat after me? I state your name.
I, Ron Campbell,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, obey, and defend
that I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Utah,
the Constitution of the State of Utah,
and that I will discharge
and I will discharge
the duties of my office with fidelity.
the duties with my office, and I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I need you to sign. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gretchen. Ron, welcome.
Thank you.
You're going to get put to work quickly.
Yes.
I'm sure it will be a smooth sailing evening.
Oh, I'm sure.
I think it will be. We're so happy to have you. Okay, it looks like we've got a good 20 minutes before our regular meeting. As happens when I fill in as Mayor Pro Tem and Scott and I can strategize, we brought ice cream. So we can do that in the break right now before our meeting starts. Thank you, council members.
That they should put a song on.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody, to City Council tonight. For those of you who weren't here earlier, we did have a 6:30 work session where we swore in our most newly appointed member, Ron Campbell. So we're super happy to have you here. We'll go ahead and first we would like to excuse Mayor Osler. I believe he will be on the phone, but he is homesick tonight with COVID. So we are hoping he feels better soon. We'll go ahead and have our invocation by Councilmember Rodella and then our Pledge of Allegiance by Councilmember Smith.
Our dear, kind, gracious Heavenly Father, we're very grateful to be gathered here today as elected officials, as city staff, city residents, and to be able to make the decisions tonight that are best for our city and for all the residents. We're especially grateful for thy hand and all that thou hast given us, and for the opportunity to live in the city and the many blessings that we have received. We say these things in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started with unscheduled public appearances. So if anybody has anything they would like to comment about that is not a public hearing item, and I think we only have one of those tonight, which is a sale of some property in the Wimbledon subdivision later on. So if anybody has comments about anything other than that, now is your chance to take 3 minutes to tell us what you're thinking about.
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council, my name is Doug Courtney, and I'm speaking to you this evening as a resident of Highland. Quickly, with regard to item 4 on the agenda, the impact fee adjustment. As it stands, I don't find the situation to be sufficiently rare as to constitute unusual circumstances. If the owner were to record a conservation easement, as is discussed in the agenda packet, that would seem sufficiently outside the normal case to be an unusual circumstance, and I'd support the impact fee adjustment in that case. If you choose to adjust the impact fee, I strongly encourage you to require such an easement. With regard to agenda item 7, I see some benefits of postponing the alcohol sales decision. By pushing it past January 1st, you eliminate it as a concern when appointing someone to the vacant council seat. It's a controversial issue about which people feel passionately. And there's a meaningful benefit to avoiding a fight that has the potential to damage council dynamics. Also, postponing the decision until January allows a majority of the council to be elected after having campaigned on the issue. Indeed, when the issue first arose, I told the mayor that it would be especially convenient if the decision were made after the election. Alas, his response was that he didn't think the developer could wait that long, and it appears that is still the case. My understanding is that the applicant will suffer material harm if this is not decided on the planned timeframe, and that pushing the decision to next year, therefore, is tantamount to denying the request. This being the case, I think we owe the applicant a timely up or down vote on the issue. This is especially true in this case, where I further understand that the request was made so late in the process because the city assured the applicant that alcohol sales would be permitted on the property. I attribute no bad intent in this. Until recently, really, I think nobody understood the full scope of the confusion with regard to our alcohol laws. Although there are legitimate reasons for postponement, I think the arguments against doing so win the day. And I urge you not to postpone the decision. Thank you.
Hello, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. Wesley Warren, Highland City resident. Doug's pretty great, isn't he? He's a capable candidate and always has something wise to say, and I feel much the same way that he does. There's a lot of good reasons. We're in a pickle, and there's a lot of good reasons to push this vote, and I understand all of them. There's a couple of things I do want to point out, or at least observations that I have. A lot of unfortunate and unfair things have happened recently with vacancies in the council, with the happenings and goings-ons and bureaucracies and the movement of government, and it leaves people out in the cold sometimes. And but I don't see a reason to address some of these unfair things that have happened with something else unfair, which would be, as Doug described it, for all intents and purposes, denying the applicant this development as they've proposed it, because they just can't wait. What can wait is everything else that we do in the government that happens on paper. Any text amendments or ordinance changes, those go through changes and they go through different iterations and versions. This development, if we pass this opportunity up, it's gone. There's no referendum to get the development back. And as was mentioned, this is a true slight to the applicant, to the developer, and one that can't be rectified later on. And I just don't see the city council not fulfilling their commitment to the residents and to the applicant to vote on this in a timely manner as a fair way to respond to these other just really unfortunate and unfair things that have also happened. One other observation, I know that it's tough with needing to fill these 2 vacancies. And they couldn't be more different. One 2 years and the other 2 months. And I know that there's the temptation to discount a shorter term or a temporary term. And I think that that characterization is demeaning to the office. Whether someone has 2 months left on their term or is really green and has only 2 years or 2 months under their belt, those votes are weighed the same. And I think that it's very unfair to these 2 council members filling the vacancies and anyone that might be running to treat the position this way. Thank you for your time and for your service. Appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Brandon Nish. I just wanted to make a comment about...
Address, please.
Sorry, what?
Address, please.
5937 West Chatham Circle. Yeah, I wanted to make a couple comments about the alcohol thing. First is that I think I speak for most folks that we moved here for a reason, because this is a unique and special city that's different from towns nearby, and we love that about Highland. Another thought I've been thinking a lot about this, is that if higher end restaurants wanted to serve the folks in this area, and the Sunday law was the thing that inhibited them from doing that, then we would have rows and rows and clusters of restaurants that are awesome, that we would love, that are sitting right on the border of our city, but we don't. So I think we have to really ask ourselves if this is like a whole bunch of effort and a whole bunch of time, and at the end of the day, it's just not going to pencil for the developer. I think it's a lose-lose situation, because if it's super successful, now we have a ton of traffic, and we have some amount of alcohol consumption, which necessarily will cause problems. One way or another, eventually, something bad's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. So that's not a great outcome. And then the other scenario is that it doesn't work out, and now we have this big development that is a failed development, and we have vacant buildings, and that's not great either. So I don't really see this being a winner for anyone. And also, if it does pass, it feels like the optics are kind of awkward, I think, because it looks like the city council they moved heaven and earth to enable this particular developer to maximize profits on a speculative investment. Ultimately, that's what this was. So I think one other final consideration is that if the law does get changed, I'm extremely confident that there will be a citizens' referendum on the issue. And so then we have to deal with that. So it seems like a lot of stuff to have a nice restaurant that may or may not even materialize. Thank you.
I'm Elizabeth Rice, Liz Rice. Do you want my address?
Yes, please.
6241 West, 9680 North, Highland, Utah. Okay. So most of the day I've done some research, and I went through the logos that the developer put up last night. And I just have a couple of concerns. I'm about to be comic relief, perhaps. But on the Black Sheep one, there are 2. Black Sheep Bar and Grill, located in West Jordan and located in, I believe it was Holiday. I looked at all of them. The other one is the Black Sheep Cafe in Provo, and I couldn't even see that they serve liquor. However, the Black Sheep Bar and Grill also has drag night. And I think when you start to bring liquor in, I think you better take a good look at what else it brings. I don't know which one it is for sure. I'm hoping it's the latter and not the first. As far as websites go, I spent a lot of time in Park City, and they're the only one that they had up there for Park City. I've never been to, but the ones that did have photos of their restaurant, they all look like the Blue Lemon, and the Blue Lemon couldn't make it. I'm a little worried about the ideas that were, not the ideas, but how the developers represent themselves. I couldn't find that either of them had ever lived in Utah, and I'm really good at research. I have been a researcher, and I couldn't find that. The younger gentleman actually lives in Vegas, and the other gentleman lives in California. And I think we need to make that clear to the people of Highland, that that is where those are coming from. Thank you very much.
My name is Jeremy Meldrum. My address is 6327 West, 10500 North in Highland. Just a couple things to correct. Darren, the younger one, he lives in San Diego. He did live in Lehigh a few years ago. He still has a rental there. Joe, the other one, lives in California. So I'm close to them, I know that. Which also makes my position on this weird, because I'm against it. I think it is very naive to think we can tell a business, yeah, you can come here if you serve alcohol, or the business is saying we will only come here if we can serve alcohol, and then to think that they won't say, okay, we want to be open on Sunday. And how can we say to certain businesses, yeah, you can serve alcohol, but you can't? I think it's something that's just going to spread. And then I think the next thing that follows is going to be the Sunday issue. And like the gentleman over here said, we moved here for a reason. We came to Highland because of the feel it had, because things weren't open on Sunday, because it had large lots, because it was a special, different place. I mean, specifically, the alcohol also is one of the reasons we moved here. So I think people moving here do that for a reason, the majority of them, as opposed to those moving here hoping they can change it, or not even living here and hoping they can change it. So I think it is crazy to mess with the good thing that we have here in hopes that we can get a restaurant with a tablecloth. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Would anybody else like to comment? No? Okay. I don't see any more comments. We will move along to the presentation part of the agenda. And our first item is we would like to present an appreciation award to Tim Ball. So Tim, if you want to come on up.
Would you like us to come down?
Yeah. Okay, I told everybody I was going to cry tonight, so this should be expected. Come over here. Tim and Tim's dad. We are really sorry to lose Councilmember Ball. He and Kim and I ran for office at the first time, and we have gotten to know each other really well, and he asked the best questions that we will continue to ask on his behalf to you, Rob. And his dedication and service is much appreciated, and while we welcome our new members, we are going to really miss Tim and be calling him regularly for opinions and advice. So Tim, thank you for all of your work, and I know that Mayor Osler is really sorry that he can't be here tonight. I know that he really wanted to be, so thank you, and thanks to your family too for coming.
The mayor would like to say something. I'm going to have him unmute himself right now.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
You know, I want to thank you. You've been a good friend. I appreciate your dedication here on the council with good thoughts. You will be missed, so thank you for your service.
Thank you, Mayor. It's okay. I just wanted to say a few words. Calvin Coolidge said that what we need is not more federal government, but better local government. And I don't believe what we've achieved is good local government or better local government. What I believe is we have accomplished something extraordinary. And every person here, without exception, is extraordinary. And I've grown to love, appreciate, and admire all of you. And I say goodbye with a heavy heart, but with a happy heart, knowing that I have lifelong, dear friendships. Thank you.
Man, I feel like I'm gonna miss Tim a lot, and I'm gonna miss his dad even a little bit more. All right, our next presentation will be Robin Wise, our events coordinator, and she is going to give us a report on the Highland Fling budget.
Sorry, go ahead and go back where you were. Mayor Pro Tem, we were actually going to rearrange the agenda because of Mayor Osler, if you remember. So if it's okay with you, the next item we were going to do was item number 6.
Sure. Okay, thank you. So this is the authorization of a contract with the Legislative Executive Consulting, and this will be presented by Andy. And Erin, am I correct that all of our votes tonight will be voice votes?
Yes, with the changes we have on council, we don't have electronic up and going and won't until the October 17th meeting. So voice votes for the next couple of meetings.
Okay. Thank you. Andy?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Dave Stewart apologizes he can't be here today. Before he knew that this was going to be scheduled tonight, he already had an out-of-town trip planned, and so he apologizes he's not able to be here in person, but he did tell me in advance that he would not be able to be here this evening. Brooke, can you go to the next slide? So just by way of just a quick reminder of where we've been. Last council meeting, we discussed it and with the council. Dave kind of gave some of his thoughts. If you recall, can we go to the next slide, Brooklyn? He feels strongly that he can help us get another $1 million for our culinary water system this coming year. There is a Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity grant that we've applied for that he is helping us work on, and he has provided assurance that if we are unsuccessful there, he feels strongly that he's got another avenue that he can help us get the the $1 million. Additionally, in addition to that, he's happy to help us seek after additional funding opportunities. The one that we've really targeted in our discussions with him to date has been the additional funding for the water. We need that additional funding so that we can install the chlorinators and the pressurized irrigation, or pressure reducing valves, and to remediate well 5. So right now, well 5 is basically infunctional for us. We can't use it, and so that $1 million will pay for those improvements. In addition to that, he will seek for other funding opportunities, and we've also identified that we would like him to help us with what we believe will be pending legislative issues this coming session. Those would include further directives by the state relative to our land use. It would be what we believe will be some attempt to restrict development revenue for the cities, and then also we believe that there will be potential bills on both sides of the transportation utility fee, one in support and probably one opposed. We don't know for sure how that's all going to come out, but he will work in our behalf in that regard. And so on the staff side, so far he has delivered on his promises, and so at least in my perspective, I don't see any reason to believe that he won't again. And so from the staff side, we would recommend approval, but we do know that there are varied opinions on the council, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Just as background for those of you who are here, we had a contract with Mr. Stewart last year where he was able to help us secure some funding for some water things. So that's reconsidering extending that contract. Council, any discussion?
Just a question regarding the likelihood that we could get this money without a lobbyist, if you will.
Well, the current grant that we have the application that we have in right now into the governor's office, I think it would be very hard for us to separate ourselves in that, number one, we received money last year from them, so that's probably not going to help us score as well. And number two, we oft find ourselves in what I term the qualified middle, being we are very qualified and deserving of the project, but so are a number of other applicants. And so it is difficult to separate yourselves. And lastly, the fact that does exist for Highland is because of our average income. We often will have difficulty in scoring well on any type of grant that is income-based or disadvantaged population-based. And so, you know, I believe that his help does make a difference in that regard to help us stand out, maybe.
Thank you.
I guess I just want to make a few comments on this one. My job is in the governor's office of planning and budget, and I am actually a fiscal grants manager. And so it is my job to essentially determine how can we get all of our cities, counties, states to take advantage of the many, many state and federal grants out there. And there are a lot of manners set up in order to accomplish this. A lot of resources out there for our cities and local governments to be able to take advantage of. I'm not a strong believer in hiring a consultant and paying him $100,000 when I think that the resources are already there and the state is already doing all that they can in order for those cities to take advantage of those grants. Andy is right. We do have a high median income. Our demographics are just, though, barely under 20,000. So it actually does qualify us for some rural grants. But in this instance, I do know what the grant he is talking about with GoEd. It's already been established. And from my resources that I talked to there, a consultant does not have any sway on how the people that receive this grant. So I'm not in favor of this. Plus $100,000 towards Mountain Ridge sounds a little bit better to me.
So, Councilwoman Riddell, last time Mr. Stewart was here, he talked about other grants, maybe aside from this one that he had mentioned specifically. Out of all of those things that he spoke about last time, do you not think that any of those are opportunities that we will need his services for?
I mean, there's so many water grants out there. That's the biggest issue right now with federal government and state government. You know, to be honest, if the cities apply for them, they have a high chance of getting them.
And I guess then my question would be for Kim, because you know more.
We applied for the water meter grant. Did we use him for that?
No, we did not use him for the water meter grant.
Who would typically be responsible, Andy, in the city for applying for these kinds of grants?
It's usually me, you know, and one of my challenges, and I know that council member Rodella is trying to help us in this regard, is just even knowing about the programs, et cetera. So, you know, the grant that you know, Dave helped us get last year, in all candor, I wouldn't have known to look at the governor's office of economic opportunity for a grant potential for the city. And so, and I'm certainly, as you all know, I'm very pro grant. I love getting grants, and somehow it warms my soul deep inside to get a grant for the city. But I just feel like, that without his assistance, we wouldn't have even known to look last year. And so I feel like he earned his money there. And he's told me he's got a plan B this year. And so, certainly this is the council's decision. I'm just reiterating kind of the assurances that he's provided me that if we don't get the current grant, that he's got a plan B and that he believes he can get it through plan B.
Do you know what the specifics are in Plan B?
He did not share plan B with me. I don't know, if that's something he didn't want to have announced publicly or if it's, anyway, so.
I do know it's a $1 million grant. The Plan B is a $1 million grant. I just don't know what it was for.
We've told him we need another $1 million for the culinary. That's kind of what we've quote unquote set him to task on this year. We were hoping that last year's grant would be enough, but unfortunately with the inflation, the cost of our wells came in a lot higher than we had hoped. And so we need another $1 million to kind of help us finish off that program.
I'd just like to make a few comments. So when I first came on the council, the first time that I had a space, but I was there in 1210, and the city at that time had a lobbyist, and the city was really tight on money, and so we eliminated the lobbyist, wondering why we'd have a lobbyist. I was kind of in the air a little bit because our general fund budget's around $13 million, and we want to spend $100,000 on a lobbyist. But I think the fact last year he was able to get a grant for $1 million, I mean, it's kind of like a 10-to-1 benefit. And Andy was very good about, I think, between water meters and grants for the Mountain Ridge Park and things, I think I calculated one time we had about $7 million in grants, which is, half the city general fund budget that we've been able to get through grants and that, which I think is pretty amazing. So I think it's important to have someone that knows how to do that can kind of consult and help the staff. But I understand Councilwoman Rodell is concerned because now that she's back up in the state governor's office, I mean, she kind of can direct the city. I don't know if that's a conflict of interest or not, but it's good to have someone that is aware of some of these things and kind of can direct it. So I'm kind of a little bit torn on this issue because Mr. Stewart also lives in Highland, so he's going to do probably the best he can for Highland. So that's an advantage because he lives there. So I've got to think a little more on this and hear a little more comments from the rest of the council.
Council, does anybody else have any more comments?
My position, typically, I look at something like this, and I respect council members Rodella's position and her concern, but I look very heavily at recommendations by the staff who have to live with the decisions that we make. And until I'm burned, I'll probably lean toward. It's always a balance, and you say, okay, it's a balance. Where are you going to fall? Which side do you err on? I err on the side of staff recommendations. So for that reason, I would be supportive.
Anybody else have any other comments? Did Mayor have any comments he'd like to make about this one?
No, I think you guys had a good discussion, just waiting to vote.
Okay, if nobody has any more comments, I'm ready for a motion.
I'll get started here. I move that the City Council approve a contract with Legislative Executive Consulting, LLC, in the amount of $100,000 and authorize the mayor to sign the contract.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we've got a motion by Ron and a second by Councilmember Smith, and we are ready for a vote. We'll go ahead and start with you for this one, Councilmember Campbell.
Yes.
No. No.
Yes.
Mayor, welcome to the party.
The mayor is yes.
Okay, that passes with the mayor's tie-breaking vote, 3-2. We can move on to our next item. Okay, jumping right into it. Let's do this. All right. This next item, the postponing the alcohol sales text amendment, I will let City Administrator Wells give us the background on that.
Mayor and Council, I'll summarize the staff report that I put together for you. This was on behalf of Mayor Osler, but I'm not going to make him talk any more than he needs to. Go ahead, Brooklyn, for me. We've talked about this a few times, as you know. So in August, when this item was first presented to you, the council ultimately decided to wait 2 months to make a decision in order to gain public feedback. On August 15th, at our next council meeting, we brought back to you kind of a draft communications plan and a timeline that included the information session we had last night, the goal of having the survey due at the end of the month so that we could get it. We need about 2 weeks after the survey closes to get it back to council on time to get everything coded. So the goal was the intention was to have the item for a decision back to council on October 17th. That still didn't meet the 2-month deadline, but it was fairly close. Ultimately, we continued that conversation on September 5th and moving, with the intention to move forward with those dates. Since then, as you know, we've had changes on the council in the midst of all of that, I should say, where Councilmember Peterson no longer was able to be with us after August 14th. Ron Campbell now joins us in her place. And then, of course, Councilmember Ball had to leave us as well, and his seat is set to be filled on October 3rd. So ultimately, Mayor and Council, I believe at this point you have 2 options. We pushed pause on going to the survey, going live with this, going to print with the survey. So because of that, we do need to, at a minimum, bump it back another council meeting. So November 7th is the soonest we could get it back to you, if you wanted to continue forward with the path of make the decision now. Alternatively, there's been discussion about moving it to January so that whatever happens in the November election, it will be those council members making this decision. As you consider this, I would encourage you to think about, the circumstance we do have going on with our council currently, the perception that the public may have regarding us altering plans on this decision, and then the expectations that we have maybe set with the applicants based on conversations that we've had with them. And so I have 2 motions prepared for you. The first, I think, is there anything else? I'm sorry, Brooklyn, can you remind me? Go forward 1 more slide. Okay, so I just have 2 motions for you. The motion to approve would be to move to January, and then an alternative motion would be to do it in the November meeting.
I'd like to make a comment here. So first of all, I want to apologize to Councilwoman Rodella. I've had kind of a little bit of time here. I've been kind of really stressed with work and all these things on the council. And sometimes things pop out of my mouth, which are inappropriate. And I don't.
Never, Scott.
Never, I know. And you and I disagree, but we treat each other with respect. And I don't think it's a conflict of interest for you to work in the governor's office. So I don't know why that is.
I actually had to fill out a form stating that it's not a conflict of interest.
Yeah, okay. And so I apologize for even bringing that up. So I hope you'll accept my apology. I sat here and I thought, why did that pop out of my mouth?
The governor's office vetted it and made sure that there is no conflict of interest.
Yeah, so I just wanted to apologize because that's the second time today I've said something kind of really stupid, and I thought, why did I do that? So please forgive me. So the second thing, I kind of brought this up, and I'll tell you why. The alcohol sales thing is a controversy, and regardless of how the council decides to vote and how the people respond on the survey and the many comments we've had. This is kind of a big thing for Highland. And I lived through the referendum and everything on the Sunday opening of that. So I was ready to go ahead and vote on this in October, November. But what I'm concerned about as I thought about it, and I had kind of a sleepless night the other night, is I think as members of the council, and I say nothing derogatory about you, Ron. I'm glad you're here on the council. But I think we get our authority by the voice of the people. I mean, we live in a constitutional republic with representatives, and we've had some unfortunate things happen. I mean, Sarah, who was excellent, who was elected a year and 8 months ago, had a change of work, had to leave, really hated to leave the council. And she left at the 1st of August. And so I had some of the constituents and the citizens say to me, gee, that's 3.5 months before the election, which is postponed because of Congressman Stewart's replacement, and why aren't we having a special election, and all this stuff. Well, we're doing everything appropriately. Rob's a great attorney. He's researched it. We're trying to follow state law and different things. But sometimes I think the state laws, and we saw Ron tonight raise his hand to sustain the Constitution and the Constitution of Utah. But sometimes the state laws, I think, kind of miss the purpose of why we want to elect people to the council. So it's kind of like they throw the baby out with the bathwater. So we have all these little regulations about how long you've got to wait, when you've got to replace everybody and things. But in the end, what happened is people don't get to vote. And so I got kind of concerned because at one point it looked like we were going to basically cancel the election because we only had 3 candidates. Now that's changed because we've had, I believe, 3 write-ins, and so it's going to go to election. And I think that's good because we can discuss the items, have a debate, I hope, and I want to encourage Stephanie to have a debate and to meet the candidate night. Let people kind of talk about these things, and then let's have a vote so that the majority of the people up here, and again, I welcome Ron. I'm not saying anything derogatory about him, but I just think when we have something as important as changing our liquor laws and our blue laws and some of the or kind of standards or whatever you want to call them that we've had in Highland for a long time, that it's good to have most of the people voting on it who have been elected and given the authority by a vote of the citizens. And so I just think that it'd be best if we postponed it till after the election and when everybody's sworn in again. So we'd have, 4 elected and 1 appointed member. Now, we heard from a couple speakers tonight about this is really bad for the developer and it'll probably, affect the project negatively. But if we don't do things as clear as we can and let the people feel like they've really had a vote on this, it will be referred. So I've been involved with city government for 13 years, I'm counting a little extra. We've had 4 major referendums and they were all successful. And so if this is referred, this whole situation gets put on the burner until next election a year from now. So it's actually to the benefit, if you want to think, to the citizens and the developer to postpone the vote until you have a full elected council, basically, as best we can do under the circumstances. So that's why, we're going to postpone it a couple months. I'm sure it's not going to destroy the development. I just think it'll be worse for them if it gets referred, because once it's referred with enough people, it's put on the back burner for a year. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. I just feel like as much as possible, we need to feel the authority given to us by the citizens. And that's the only reason I'm saying this. I'm not doing it because I'm hoping to destroy the project or anything, because I want to hear what people have to say, but I'd like to hear what people have to say during the election process as well. So that I've said what I want to say.
Anybody else?
Just I'll show you a little bias here because I'm here by a vote of representatives who were voted in. So I see it as a legitimate process. It's a process that's mandated. I go back, I'm old enough to know that Gerald Ford was brought into the presidency without one person voting for Gerald Ford, and he ended the war that I was involved in 4 years in Vietnam. So it is a process that is dictated by the state, by voting regulations, and it was followed to the T. And that process ended up with me being selected and voted in by representatives who were voted in to make those decisions.
And a coin toss.
I just want to comment a little bit about this. First of all, I have talked to the developers, and I have said, what is the end result if we push this off to January? How does it affect your development? What is realistically what will happen? And they have said, we will go back to the drawing board and this development will not happen. We'll most likely have to go back to our first plan because leases have been, since it has been communicated to them that this vote was to take place on October 17th, they have essentially told all their businesses they've lined up and their construction and their workers that everything will begin November 1st, dependent on the October 17th. That's the reality of it. I mean, I'll just be honest. If you guys decide to put this off till January, that's the end of the project right there. And I've talked every other way of can we, there's no way to put it off, anything we can do. But the reality is we have been working with these developers for 2 years. And for 2 years, they have been told that they were allowed to serve alcohol in their restaurants. We sat down with them. The mayor was there. We talked about different types of drinks they could serve. They had that understanding and that direction when we approved the plan for them. I was there, staff was there, and it was because of a misunderstanding on our part that there is an exemption on just their area. And it's sad. It shouldn't have to be that way, but now this is where we are at. I believe in the election process. I believe that when a person is appointed to a council, they are appointed by the people that were elected by the people. And as Wes said, they are no less than somebody that has been elected here, and they should not feel that way. His vote is just as good as mine. Whoever is put on this council to fill Tim's spot is just as good as mine, because that is our election process and our state laws. And to be able to say that I think there are some things I don't agree on and that we maybe should not follow, I've heard that said before on a federal level. We should not ever say that. I have had so many emails in my account saying I thought this was going to come onto the agenda on October 17th. And to be honest, I'm a little bit disheartened because we had a process in place in which we were supposed to mail out surveys, and we were supposed to look at those surveys, be able to understand what the residents wanted, and they were supposed to be back, and the developers understood that, the date they were supposed to be mailed, and that we were to have this on October 17th. And that process should not have changed because one person all of a sudden decided that they should put this on the agenda. I feel like that's a little bit unethical right there. You can't do that. We have been given the opportunity to have an open house, to have surveys, and I think you need to have faith in the council that we will appoint somebody that will look at those surveys, look at the results, and do what the people want. And as for a referendum, that's the whole reason why we are doing these, to show everyone what does the majority of people want? What is best for all of Highland? That's my say there. I absolutely do not think we should put this off. I think the process had been put in place, and we spent a lot of time working on that process, and we should follow it through.
Thank you. Rob, I have a question.
Yes.
So, because there was a comment made about being a slight to the applicant, have we given the applicant due process on this item?
The applicant filed an application for a code amendment. They were entitled to have a presentation before the Planning Commission and Council and to have the council consider what they wanted and make a decision one way or the other. The council, they did make those presentations. Planning Commission heard them. The council has considered them. They made a presentation to the council. We even had a motion that was made to potentially approve what they requested that did not carry. In my mind, that satisfies due process of what they were entitled to by the application. They had an opportunity to be heard. That does not necessarily resolve all of the concerns of the developer, whether a developer has been slighted or whether they should be afforded measures of consideration because of expectations. That's certainly a valid concern. I was just going to say, as a legal matter, the due process issue, I believe the developer has been granted it. They had a chance to get a decision. It hasn't yet worked out in their favor. But that doesn't mean the council should not consider the developer's interest in this as part of your overall consideration of this matter.
Thank you. Mayor Osler, did you want to make any comments?
Yes, I would. He made a comment about this was a medical. Let's go through kind of what happened. We did not have everything put together for the flyer drop on Thursday. What ended up happening is, since it wasn't from Thursday, it wasn't even printed and mailed out the first, possibly, somewhere this week. And we had to get it back by the 30th in order to get that. I was really worried because everything was behind on Deacon's View, that the finance will only have 1 week to build China in. So I have a question for these council members. What percentage of the residents' responses in favor or against would get you to say, I will go that direction? And I'd be curious if each council member responds, and he says, this percentage, or where we can be at to get a change, what is it you're looking for from this decision?
Does anybody want to respond to that question?
No, I don't think it's an appropriate question to be asked.
That's if you want to be political and keep it open so you don't get caught. What I'm saying is the feedback you can find and that is not enough for them.
I can't make that decision right now because I want to have to be able, there's other factors around it. What percentage of people replied to this survey is one of those. What percentage of people show up at the meeting? That's another one. I mean, when it takes into account what the majority of residents say, that takes into account what the majority of residents say. And so it could be, if it's a 55-45, that's 60-40. I haven't even thought about what percentage it is. But what I have thought about is, what is the election process and how do we follow it? And by putting off a vote so that a new council can be elected is not something that any city council should do.
So the question I have is, are you worried about residents saying, hey, this council member came in, really got comfortable that any of the other individuals that are only there for, they're there for 4 meetings, they get to come in, make one of the more controversial decisions in the city, and then they're off. Is that a concern?
That's not a concern because if you look at the applicants that applied for this spot, every single applicant that has applied for this spot is also applying to run. So every single applicant is accountable. And I also am not concerned because I know each one of my city council members. And they are wanting to put somebody in there that is able to jump into this situation, has been able to have an open mind, and to be able to look at the survey results and have what is best for all of Highland residents in mind. They won't put somebody in based off of one issue. I have faith in our city council members. They will not put somebody in based off of one issue.
I appreciate the concerns of the mayor and the comments from Councilwoman Rodella. It's hard for me to say exactly what percent I would need on the survey. I think surveys are great, but I think elections are better. And elections are the way the Founding Fathers set up the constitutional republic so that the people feel like they have a voice on an issue. So surveys are great, but we didn't set up the Constitution to make decisions based just on surveys. And I suggest the survey because I wanted more information. But we are so close to the election, this is going to postpone their development a couple months. I have a hard time believing that they will eliminate their, we've already approved this development. The only thing we're talking about is whether they can bring in restaurants that serve alcohol. I'm not sure 2 months make a big difference. When if we're really doing it right and the people think it's been done through election process and a good discussion, that in the end, there's not going to be a referendum. Because if it's referred, it's going to delay it a year. So I'm trying to think about, I just feel the best way to do it is the way we should do it as a constitutional republic and have votes and talk about. And controversial things fuel elections. And people express their opinion and then people vote. And oftentimes it is they're voting on one issue. Because I got defeated because of the Sunday opening issue when I ran the second time. And so I know how that works, and I just think we need to have the discussion in the election, and we're postponing this vote apparently about 2.5 months. I'm not sure that that's irreparable damage to the developers.
Have you talked to the developers?
I sat behind them and talked to them yesterday.
But did you have a conversation and ask them that question? What is the end result?
No, I didn't have that conversation, but in all due fairness,
so
they're only interested in one thing, Kim, and it's making money. Is making money, and so they're going to tell us anything to get this passed through, and they did last night to a large degree. And they misled us on some of these restaurants and what they offer and different things. So I think the people need to have time to go through this. And in the end, if the people want liquor sales in the Highland City, then they can express it through the survey and the election. We're postponing this vote by 2.5 months at the most. I just think it should go through the electoral process.
So I had another question that is for you. We've had kind of this all teamed up. We just had an information meeting last night and told residents there's a survey coming out. If we postpone it until January, we're sending surveys out, somewhere in that November or Thanksgiving or Christmas, we get a good response. Are you concerned by that?
No. I think we're going to have a lot of discussion with the election. The elections is postponed, what is it? Is it the second or third week of November this year? They moved it because of... yeah.
It's November 21st, so the third week.
November 21st.
It's the week of Thanksgiving.
So there's 2 months to kind of really discuss things, and they have the election, and you can do it.
So I see we have a hand up in the audience. My understanding is that this is not a public comment. Is that correct?
It's not a public hearing. Madam Mayor Pro Tem, it's up to you whether or not you want to take public comment.
I feel like it would be difficult to take public comment only because I feel like there would be lots of opinions and lots of comments. And we did receive your letter yesterday, correct?
Yes.
Mr. Ruzicka?
My question, I just wanted to ask a question, and that was, would there be any public comment?
There is not scheduled to be public comment on this item tonight. There was the open public comment at the first of the meeting, but there's not public comment on this specific issue tonight.
Well, I came according to your published schedule to talk at this meeting.
Was this meeting ever scheduled, Erin?
I'm wondering if what Mr. Rizika is referring to, we put goal times on as to when we think we're going to be at certain agenda items. So it looks like we were thinking we'd get to this one at 8:15. But so the meeting is published to start at 7 o'clock, and maybe we should make that clear. Maybe it is clear. I'm not sure that those are kind of where we think we're going to be at certain times, but doesn't necessarily mean that's when we're going to do it.
But we jumped ahead on agenda items.
But the agenda also never allowed for a public hearing on this item. So the unscheduled public appearances was scheduled at the beginning of the meeting.
And we held those.
Which was held, correct.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Rizika?
Kind of.
Mayor, do you have any other comments?
No, I'm just interested in seeing the motion and where it goes.
And I'm not like a professional at this mayor situation, but I do feel like if we open it up to one individual for comments, then we're going to need to open it up for everybody. And I feel like we have a process laid out regardless of this for the survey. I guess I have a couple of comments in response to Mayor Osler's question about a percentage. I had a nice conversation with several different people today, and I agree with Councilwoman Rodella that I don't think that there is a number that I could tie that to, because I think we have to take everything into consideration. I think we have to take into consideration all of the public comment that we've gotten and that we will get over the next however long it takes before we make the decision. And I will say one thing that I feel very strongly about with this decision is I appreciate that as a council, I feel like everybody is acting very much according to what they think is the right thing to do. And that is much appreciated by me. So I guess my first comment would be in response to a comment that was made that this would be a slight to the applicant. And I guess that I'm looking at it a little bit differently in that I don't want to slight our residents. And if I'm going to err on the side of making a decision, or you don't want to slight anybody, but I feel like I will defer to what I think is best for the residents. You know, I agree. This developer has had this issue, and he has been hearing a lot from staff. There have been lots of meetings. He's been told a lot of things. And I agree with all that. But at the end of the day, the decisions that have been made are not ours alone as a council. A lot of the decisions have been made by the developer as far as what proposal he wanted to present and when, and he had full access to city code as well. You know, we've had a couple of items recently where it's come up that residents have gotten information from city staff that was maybe not 100% accurate. This is the case with Alpine Fence and with a few different things. And I think that while we should hope that we can get perfect information to residents every single time, I think that staff does the best that they can. We have turnover in staff, and so I think that at the end of the day, the responsibility is always on us to make sure we understand what the rules are. You know, I've said this before, I live in open space. I don't think I knew what open space was going to be like when I purchased my home in open space, and I don't love open space. But I bought it, and it's my own fault for not knowing that is what I bought. I appreciated what Councilwoman Rodella said about that she doesn't think anybody on this council would choose a single issue candidate. And I think that is true as well. And she is actually the one who made the comment, and I'll be honest, I was a little taken aback at our last meeting when you said, I hope that nobody would make this be a single issue. And I completely agree with that. I guess in my mind, and I don't at all diminish Councilman Campbell, because you were appointed by those of us who were elected. But I think there's a difference to be appointed to a term that is 2 years, where you will have a lot of decisions to make, than it is to be appointed to a position where probably there is this one very consequential decision that you will make. And like Councilwoman Rodella said, I don't think that this will be something maybe that can be decided exactly by the survey. I think it will give us an idea of where people think, but if it's 51% to 49%, and we have to weigh in all these other factors that we've considered for a long time and will be accountable for going forward, I find it difficult to, if there were a 2-2 split, I don't know if there would be, but if there would, to assume that tie-breaking vote would then possibly be somebody who had been appointed to the council for this very, very short term. And I think it's very clear that while we don't want a one-issue candidate, this is clearly an issue. It's clearly an issue. When I filed to run for my seat back in June, when we filed, there were 4 people who filed. To fill the vacancy, we had 17 or 18 applicants. Even for a write-in candidate, we have more candidates. And so I guess to me, while I can say I don't want it to be a one-issue thing, this has become a defining issue, and I don't think we can ignore that. And so because of that, I feel like the right thing to do is to postpone this decision to January, understanding that there may be consequences to the developer, but those consequences aren't all on us. They're also on the developer and decisions that have been made for years. This development was approved. We approved this development a long time ago. It's this alcohol piece that I guess has been the holdup. And so to me, we delay it until January, and that means we don't have people working on this construction project over the holidays, which it seems like they wouldn't be doing a lot of anyway. So anyway, I talked a lot. So anybody else?
I'll make a motion if there's no more comment.
No, I'd like to hear from Ron. Have you talked to the developers to see what the consequences of what she is proposing?
I have, and my concern, and it's a deep concern, is that the developers have proceeded with an understanding that they had received from the staff. And when they are told something, especially on the timing of things, development is a very complex arena to live in, that they're living in. They have people in the wings waiting to sign contracts, and we've made assurances, apparently, that they could serve alcohol, and then we've said, well, we're going to have to vote on it, and then we're going to vote on it on this date, and we're pushing it. That is a concern to me, and I honestly believe, and this is just me right now based on what I heard from them, that if we don't act on this quickly, we won't have a project. I really believe that, and I believe if we don't get alcohol, we won't get the high-end restaurants, and that's okay if that's what people want. But the survey will help us understand that. I'm not ready to make a decision on yes or no on alcohol at all until I have more information and I see the survey. But I think the timeliness of what the developers have been put through, that we put them through, I think we have an obligation to our word, and our word doesn't seem to be very efficacious. It just seems like we've been unfair, I guess is the right word.
So I have a comment, and I'd be happy to hear from Mr. Ruzicka, but let me just make this comment. I think, first of all, we need to realize we have a great staff, but the staff has not been elected, they don't make, and there has never been a council in the history of Highland who has approved alcohol sales. So why this applicant was told this? So where the confusion has come is that after the turn of the century, the state changed the liquor by the drink laws, and we didn't upgrade ours. So it became this issue of what's not prohibited is permitted. But there's never been a council, and so I'm disappointed that anyone on the staff told them that they could serve alcohol when you looked at the code, that particular area had been voted on by the council and said no alcohol sales. So I'm sorry there was a mistake made, and I apologize to the developers, but if the staff made the mistake, they do not make the laws, they didn't check the code. And so, you know, everybody makes errors, but Brittany was very right about the fact that we're not obligated by the mistakes that people make, and we were obligated by our code, and our code does not allow alcohol sales in that area. And so my feeling is it's still, and I agree with many of the things that have been said here, and I appreciate Councilman Bill's comments and different things, but my feeling is we should postpone this until we've had a good discussion during the election, look at the survey, and the mayor just said the survey can't go out because it's not ready to go out yet. And so I would recommend that we get the survey out by the end of the month and let people look at it during October, talk about it. We have the election in November, and then go ahead at the very first council in January, vote on whether we're going to approve alcohol sales in the city.
I want to be clear that I am not at all saying that we owe them alcohol sales because we said that they had it. My position is that we owe them an up and down vote. That we need to make the decision that we keep putting off and we keep putting off. And it's that putting it off, and putting it off. I don't know how many times it was put off or how many months that adds up to, but at some point it takes a toll, and at some points it kills a project. So that's what I heard from the developers. I believe they were genuine in what they were sharing with me. And just seeing what we put them through, it seems like we owe them at least an up and down vote on this.
I guess I just have a question for you. Are you ready to take on the burden from the people of knowing that your decision tonight will essentially not allow the people to be able to voice their thoughts and their opinions on whether they want this project or not? Because essentially this will kill the project. And so that burden will be on you, and I will let the people know that.
Is that a threat?
It's not a threat. It's called being transparent. I am going to be transparent. I will let the people know what the decision tonight was made and the consequences of it. And I mean, we've already been threatened with a referendum, and I want to let you guys know that I want to be transparent with the majority of people that have approached me and said, this is something we want. And I will have to be transparent with them and said, I'm sorry, it's done. Okay? I'm just going to be transparent on that.
Mr. Ruzicka, do you have a comment about the process or about alcohol sales? Because we're not going to debate alcohol sales tonight. If there's a comment about the process, I will take a comment about the process. But you need to come up to the microphone and state your name and address, please.
My name is Don Ruzicka. I live at 5882 West, 9600 North in Highland. Councilman Smith alluded to this. We live in a republic. We don't live in a democracy or a bureaucracy. And a republic means that the people decide. A survey, as has been talked about tonight, and a council person's decision based on that survey, if they are leaning towards voting yes on the product or on the project because 51% of the surveys that came in wanted the project, that's a democracy. In a democracy, majority rules. In a republic, that's not the case. You people all represent us. You were elected, and that's another point. We have very unusual circumstances this year. As it stands right now, if we go ahead with a vote on this project, 1/3 of our city council is unelected. And I don't care what the regs say, the council has the right to appoint someone to fill a vacancy, and that's great. but that is not an elected representative. So
Thank you. Thank you. And since I opened up to Mr. Ruzicka, is there anybody else who had a comment about the process? Something that we haven't already discussed, or a comment about the process itself?
Madam Pro Tem, may I make a couple staff clarifications?
Please.
The survey and mailer is ready to go out. So on Thursday evening, it was finished. About that time, discussion ensued amongst the council wanting to potentially delay this. And when that happened, so the intention was for us to send it to the printer on Friday. It takes about a week to get to people because of the way we're printing it will take extra time. Because there was uncertainty as to when this decision was being made, I spoke with the mayor and he and I jointly agreed that it made sense to hold off because I didn't know what to put on the survey for the due date. We were worried that if the decision was put off until January, the council would worry about the validity of the results because it had been 3 months ago. And so we made the decision to hold off on printing, but it's ready to go out tomorrow if council wants it to, if that's the timeline that you ask us to do. Secondly, I appreciate Councilmember Smith's comment. We do have an excellent staff, excuse me. We absolutely make mistakes, and I'm really, really sorry whenever those mistakes are made, and I feel personally responsible for them and want us to do better. I believe, while I was not privy to those conversations at that time, I believe what happened is staff had focused on the municipal code, which just said no beer. We hadn't looked at, neither us nor the developer had looked at the development code, which says no alcohol for them in that area. And I think that's what all of us were operating under until the development code issue was raised.
Right, so it's confusing. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm sorry that we made that error and misled anyone. I'm not sure who it was. I'm sorry that error was made.
Thank you. All right, Wes, I see you have a quick comment, and then we're going to move along because I don't want to open this up to a larger debate.
Just a process comment.
Sure.
Yeah. Wesley Warren, Highland resident. Elections, absolutely very important. And elected officials, just as important. And you guys are elected to make decisions that affect us for decades and decades. And one of those decisions that we elect you to do is to handle circumstances where there's a vacancy and we need to put in a council member. And that the ramifications of that decision is no more or less than many of the other decisions that the council makes that we have elected you to make. So just preserving the election process and defining it a little more clearly.
Okay.
Thank you. I would like a chance to respond to Councilwoman Rodella because that was a pretty pointed question. It would be much easier for me, I think, to say politically, let's make a decision so that I don't have to talk about it during the election. And I'm not willing to do that. And, you know, you said what you would tell people about me, and I guess that what I will tell people when they ask me who they should vote for or what my relationships have been, I will say that Councilwoman Rodella and I have worked well together. We haven't always agreed on everything, but I feel like she has approached the issues with integrity and doing what she thinks is best. My hope is that you would say the same about me, and as you indicated, not turn this into a single issue election. And I think that, and this is what I told the developer when I met with him way back in the spring. I said, this issue will turn Highland against each other. And the fact that it's doing that is sad. So I guess if the strategy that you will use is to tell people that because of me, they don't have nice restaurants, then you can tell them that. But, you know, when you said we owe the developer a decision up or down, we gave the developer a decision, and then we offered to do this survey to make sure we were doing the right thing. We approved this development several months ago. So do I think I have a responsibility to the developer at this point? No, I think I have a responsibility to Highland residents. And so if this becomes an ugly campaign issue, I think it's really unfortunate, because I think that we both have the residents' best interest in mind, and I think that there are lots of decisions that we are going to have to make, and assuming this is the only one that we'll look at, I think is a mistake.
So, Mayor Pro Tem, I would like to make a motion.
I just wanted to make one more comment. When you say we have the residents' best interest in mind, have you looked at your emails?
I have read every single email, and I would be surprised if there were many people that you could find on any side of any issue that have not received a response from me. So I'm sure after this I'll get responses saying you haven't responded to me. But I've read every single email, and I have responded to all, most if not all.
So
Yes.
I am just saying, every single email I'm seeing tonight, every single one is asking for you not to put off this decision.
Mayor Pro Tem, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, go ahead.
I move that the Highland City Council table the alcohol sales tax amendment until January 2024. And I would give I would give direction to the staff that they go ahead and print the survey. And I think we can decide as a council when that goes out, hopefully sometime in October, because I think the survey going out before the election and it becomes a topic in the election is a good thing, because it gives us more input on what is a very important decision for the city. And I support the development. I support restaurants. I think the issue here, again, is whether we're going to have alcohol sales in this city. And I think it needs a longer time of conversation. So my move is that we go ahead and postpone the sales tax amendment, or not sales tax, I'm sorry, alcohol sales tax amendment until January 2024, the first meeting in January of the council.
Okay, we have a motion by Council Member Smith to table the alcohol sales tax amendment issue until January 2024. Do we have a second? I will go ahead and second the motion, and then we are ready for a vote. Let's start with you this time, Councilwoman Rodella.
No.
Yes?
Yes.
No.
Mayor, you're up again.
The mayor is a yes.
Thank you. That passes 3-2, that vote being to table the alcohol sales tax amendment until January 2024. Next item. Oh, that's me. I forgot. I can say next item, but I'm in charge of that. Okay. The city council vacancy update. Erin, do you want to just let us know?
You know what, Madam Pro Tem, so you received an email from Rob Patterson about kind of some questions surrounding why did we do, why are we appointing rather than going to an election? So Rob outlined those questions or that for you earlier in an email. It essentially is the state controls election processes, and because of the timing when the vacancies occurred, there is no ability, state code does not allow us to do a special election. It has to be appointed by council. I'm happy to let him go into more detail if you would like. The other thing we had is to update you. There have been no changes today, so will you go forward a couple to the list of names, Brooklyn? The 3 individuals who are, well, let's see, those are our write-in candidates, John LaFront, Elizabeth Rice, Wesley Warren, and then those same individuals plus Doug Courtney have signed up as vacancy, though that is open until Thursday. So we could have more sign up as well. Happy to go into more detail if you would like, but that is the high-level summary.
Can I just make a comment? So I know we followed state code completely, but I think we maybe need to work with our legislators to be sure that the goal always is to let people have a voice through a vote. And it just seems to me that they have a lot of artificial deadlines because the ballots are not even going to go out for print until this week, I understand. So I just think we always need to kind of, I mean, the city's done everything correct, okay? Rob's done everything correct. We've done everything correct as a council. But at the same time, I think, my personal opinion is there needs to be a way to have special elections, especially, I just think there always needs to be a way for the people to vote. And I'm again, Ron, I'm not disparaging. You are a member of the council, we voted, but at the same time, I think it's important, because I went through election 4 times, and I've been many times, and unlike what Mr. Warren said, I've never had a discussion of people saying, we're voting for you because if there's a vacancy, you'll vote for it. There's never been a discussion of that ever. So this has been a unique situation, and I'm just thinking it's always best to have a vote of the people.
That kind of change is not up to a discussion for us. We cannot make that kind of change. It would have to go to the state. The state would have to change the regulations.
Yeah,
you could do
absolutely
that
true. I'm
lobby,
expressing my opinion.
whatever process, but it would be done at the state level. We at the city level have no option but to follow the regulations.
Yeah, honestly, if that is something that this council truly cares about, that's something we could work with Mr. Stewart about.
We just hired a legislator, a lobbyist. I appreciate those comments. Does anybody have any questions for Rob Patterson? Because I think elections are important. So if anyone has any questions about this process, council? Questions? No? Okay.
I have one.
Yeah, I think we're not taking questions on this, but as an election question, you are welcome to.
I thought you said if there was.
Oh, you're good. I'm sorry. I was speaking towards council. That was my apologies. But if you have a question, we would be happy to answer it. So please email it in. I read all my emails, so I will check it. Okay.
Consent calendar? Or?
What? Yeah.
Oh, the fling. We got to talk about the fling.
Yeah, we're back to our presentation from Robin. Robin, you're still here. Perfect. Let's hear about the fling budget. Let's celebrate.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem and council members, thanks for having us up here. Okay, so here's our flat, here we go. So here's our expense report for the fling for this year coming off of here. Couple of things we wanted to make note of. We kept our sponsorship fees the same as they were last year, and we will be raising those next year. Our vendor rentals were down this year, going over why we are a little bit lower in our income. We spent a total of $3,685 more than we did last year on the fling. We were hoping to be in the $15,000 range, but we are not quite there. A couple of reasons. Prices on equipment have been amazing this year. We had to get one more generator and one more light tower than we had to last year due to the glow run and several of the other events that we had them. To rent 2 generators, 4 spider boxes is $2,039. To rent the 1 light tower that we needed was an additional $2,163.71, which took us way above budget in that category. Our net is close to what it was last year. It was projected, though, in the budget that was done before I came, that the sponsorship would bring in $17,000. Our actual sponsorship income this year was $15,850. Our kid zone was down about $3,000 this year from what it was last year. Last year, the bounce houses only made $571 in profit. It might be time that we look at doing something different than to the bounce houses that might bring more revenue money in, especially if the new park is completed and we've got some additional options. You know, maybe it is we move that talent show to the park next year and bring adults with it too. Would like very much to meet with you all later and get your ideas of what you think we can do, needs to be done, needs to be taken care of in different areas. My first thing that I would love to see is if it were, in Public Works budget, if even, we spent years building it out of the fling, but if we could, just the use of 1 or 2 more generators and a light tower could potentially save us $6,000 off of our fling expense. Not sure what Andy thinks that would actually cost, but they are our biggest expenses of the fling. You guys got any questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to tell you, I spent some time in the city council booth, and my grandkids, had 3 grandkids there, and my wife, and they loved the bounce houses and the water slides and stuff. They stayed in them the whole time. And these were kids kind of between the age of 8 and 14, and I thought they'd be really bored. They had a ball, so I appreciate it, and I appreciate all your work. I thought it was a good fling.
Well, thank you. Anybody else? Comments?
Anyone else?
You did a great job with the fling.
Oh, thanks. Well, we just very much want to tell all of you thank you so much. I know you spent a very hot day out there answering a gazillion questions about the new park, and you represented our city well, and we appreciate it. Thank you very much.
So I'm would make one request.
Yeah.
The next year, there be a sign in the city council tent saying, "Complaints are us."
You really want
Because I heard
will do
about
it.
everything, and okay.
Complaints are us. Okay, duly noted.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you, Robin.
Thank you for everything, you guys.
It's a
We
busy
appreciate
week
your
for
help.
you. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think we are moving on to consent items. Is that correct, Erin?
Yes, ma'am.
So we've got 2 items on our consent agenda. Do we have a motion?
I'd like to pull consent item 3B, reimbursement agreement with Williams View Development. I just had a couple questions for Andy, if I could.
Okay, should we vote? Erin, is it better to vote on the first consent agenda
Since you're
item?
doing voice, I think you can go ahead and ask those questions now.
Okay.
Okay, the question I had is we're appropriating $50,000 to pipe an irrigation ditch. And I read through the agreement and that, and it's being split with Lehigh and the developer and different things, or Lehigh.
It's Lehigh Irrigation and then
irrigation
Patterson
company. Yeah, can you tell me how long, I wasn't quite sure how long the irrigation ditch is, why it costs $50,000 to pipe it. Is it just the size, the diameter? I wasn't quite sure.
Yeah, so it's a 24-inch concrete pipe, and it's about 1,400 feet. So it's from 11250 or 11200, where it intersects 6000 West all the way down to Dry Creek. So it's kind of all along the Williams View frontage, and then down along Chris Howden's frontage actually until it hits Dry Creek. And a portion of it runs through some of the existing pavement, et cetera. And so the costs aren't unanticipated. I mean, they're not, I realize it's very expensive, but it's not, out of line with what we would have anticipated.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to make a motion that we approve, the Highland City Council approve consent item 3B, reimbursement agreement with Williams View Development as delineated in the resource material.
I think we can go ahead and add both items on there, right, Erin?
Oh, yes.
Would you like to?
We usually do it separate. And also the approval of the meeting minutes from August 4th, 2023.
I'll second.
Okay, we've got a motion by Councilmember Smith with a second by Councilwoman Bradella, and I will start on this one. I'm a yes.
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 Mayor, no need for you on those consent items. Thank you. All right, moving on to the impact fee adjustment for Brandon Nish. We'll go ahead and have the introduction by Rob Patterson, our city attorney, and then we'll give the applicant an opportunity to address the issue as well.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and City Council. This is a request from a resident to adjust an impact fee for the PI, pressurized irrigation, for a lot that he owns, not planning on, at least in the near future currently, to build on. There's no home on it. It's just been landscaped, at least partially. And so we're trying to assess the impact fee, and he's requested an adjustment, so it's coming to you. Move on. Prior council direction, you haven't looked at this specific request before. However, back in about a year ago, you did a similar request for a Bull River property, you may recall. In that case, somewhat similar situation where you had a home in a landscaped area where they're putting in irrigation, but their entire lot was not being irrigated because under the Bull River HOA, their bylaws prohibit landscaping of portions of their property. They're required to leave it natural. The council approved an adjustment for the PI impact fee for that property owner, but required them to sign a recorded agreement against their property, essentially saying you will comply with your HOA and get the HOA approval of your site, as well as you will come back to the city if you modify that site plan, and you'll have to pay additional impact fees and get our approval of any adjustments. Our recommendation is that you review, I'll outline the law and the applicant proposal. I also recommend you listen to Mr. Nish and hear his side of the story, and determine whether an adjustment is necessary, and then if it is necessary, decide what conditions to place upon it. We would recommend having some kind of recorded easement, conservation, or no-build designation. We can come up with the exact terms later. That would be part of the plat for that lot. So that would be on notice for anyone who might own in the future what portion is allowed to be landscaped and what portion is not without city approval. So this is the property we're talking. It's up in Beacon Hill. You'll see the applicant owns the property just to the kind of the southeast, the eastern part of that circle. It's the lot that shows no home on it that's been highlighted in blue. I gave a little bit more background because we have a newer council member here. The city imposes impact fees on all new development. So an impact fee is to offset impact, meaning because the city has a pressurized irrigation system, but we know that as we add 100 new homes, we're going to need to put in certain facilities, new pumps, new lines, something, because of that new development. So the city says, all right, new development, when you come in, we'll assess you a fee, so we can then put in those improvements in the future to offset your impact to our system. Typically, we assess those impact fees at the time of building permit, because that's when we know now there's a definite impact, something is going in on this lot. So it's usually your building permit comes in, and we assess all of our impact fees, including pressurized irrigation or R4PI. This one, it's a bit odd because there's no building permit ever been issued for it because there's been no construction on it. However, it's now been landscaped. It does, and I want to clarify, this was a little bit inaccurate in the staff report. I got some conflicting information from staff, so, and Ms. Nish corrected, so I wanted to make sure council's clear. The meter has already been installed, and there is a private irrigation, sprinkler system there. So that's what has been watering this landscaping. That's all installed, but at no point was a impact fee ever paid for that. So next slide. That new landscaping was put in September using this existing meter and PI system. We became aware of that in at some point in 2022 and sent some notices to Mr. Nish discussing the need to pay the impact fee to make sure the PI usage charge, or monthly rate, was also being paid. He started paying the usage charge, but asked that we were close to the end of the season when the PI was about to be turned off, that we resolve this essentially next year. So it's taken a little bit to get it before the council, but here we are. So here's kind of the general proposal. We'll obviously finalize exact square footages of all of this once, assuming the council approves this, we'll have a survey done that he would prepare, so we'll confirm all of that. The lot is just over 27,500 square feet. The proposed landscaped area is around 18,750 square feet. You can see it kind of outlined in blue there. The non-landscape portion is kind of that natural, where there's the trees off to the northeast portion of the lot. Essentially the request is he does not plan to landscape it. Doesn't want to put sod in, doesn't want to extend the sprinklers into that area and water it. So because of that, there's a smaller impact on the city's PI system. He's not using the PI system for that area of the lot. So the fees that are due, there's no meter fee due because it's been installed. PI usage fees are being paid. The impact fee that's typically due for the square footage of the lot would be around $14,000. The requested impact fee, so subtracting out that northeast portion where there's no proposed landscaping, would be around $9,500, so about a difference of $4,500 for that square footage. The legal standard for this. City is required by both city and state law to make adjustments to impact fees to respond to unique or individualized circumstances, to ensure that impact fees are imposed fairly and equitably on the people who pay them. So in order to approve the request, the council will need to find that there's unusual circumstances associated with this property that justify that, and that an adjustment is necessary to make sure the impact fee being paid is equal or commensurate with the actual impact to the city. You can't require an impact fee for an impact that isn't happening. We've outlined a couple of possible conditions of approval. I went over those beginning, but if you do decide that this does meet those criteria, we would recommend that you have Ms. Nish apply for and pay for the cost to survey the property, prepare that plat amendment, and record that easement. And we would work with him to come up with the language for that plat restriction. That would essentially be to the fact that this is a conservation area or a non-buildable, non-landscaped area. No changes can happen without city permission and another plat amendment process. And you'd also be required to pay impact fees. And the second condition is that he would just pay the adjusted impact fee based on the actual survey that says, here's the actual area being landscaped. So with that, I have a motion to approve and a motion to deny, but I also recommend that you talk with Mr. Nish and hear his request. But I'm also happy to answer any questions, council.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions before Mr.?
Could I ask a couple of questions?
Sure.
So, Andy, I mean, we're working hard to install our pressurized irrigation meters. Correct. And I keep forgetting where we've done it first, but I thought this was one of the early neighborhoods.
This area we started in.
And so have we installed, and will we install a pressurized meter for each of these two lots, even though he owns one and it's been hooked up to one system? You understand my question?
Yeah, I believe he's fed from both of them, and so I think he's got a meter on each of them. He would.
So you already have
he's shaking
meters?
his head in confirmation, but I believe that's how it's gone.
Okay. But we're not using the meters really, I mean, right now.
Yeah, not right now. I mean, right now, they're going in, but unfortunately, we're waiting on a few parts before people can start getting the live reads and know what they're using. But our plan will be to have them available. By next spring, we certainly should have the parts to have it available that people can start getting the live reads on what they're using. But we won't look to actually change the rates till 26 probably, the calendar year 26, or fiscal year 26, sorry. Get my words done.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question regarding the, if this is the applicant's desire to only do this much and to hold the rest in its native state, will that be binding to any new buyer? Will they be bound by that same restriction? Will it carry over, in other words, if the property is sold?
Yes, in fact, that's exactly why we recommend that first condition. And we discussed even having it by something recorded, but we thought it'd be, frankly, from staff level, it's better to have it on a plat, because when someone goes to buy a lot or a home, you typically get the plat with your title report, and it will show a big, clear, hatched out area saying non-landscaped, cannot be landscaped. So that way it'll bind him and any future owners of that lot.
Very good.
I have a question. It says Mr. Nish did begin paying the monthly charges for PI water usage of $48.86 in October of 2022. Was he supposed to be paying that before October of 2022?
To our knowledge, I believe the irrigation did begin in about September of 2020 when the landscaping went in. Usage charges were not paid until 2022.
So is there back pay then that we need to collect as well?
We've not assessed that because we started assessing it when it came to our knowledge. We ran some quick numbers. It's about a $1,200 difference.
Okay, so include that as well.
Okay. Mr. Nish, if you have any comments or want to explain, welcome. It's fun here, isn't it?
Yeah. It's been an exciting night to be a part of this. Well, first of all, I know it's late, and I apologize, honestly, that so many people are having to spend so much time on this. I'm a little bit sheepish about that, but honestly, the reason that I brought this up was because it's $14,000. Like, we did not know that that would be the fee. And I don't know how, I guess people typically roll that into their mortgage or something. I don't know how people pay for that. So, but just to give you a little bit of backstory, we bought that lot along with the house. The previous owner of the house also owned that lot. So we bought them together, and it was an unsightly weed patch that blew weeds in everybody's yards, and it had construction debris on it. It was just a terrible eyesore. And so we thought we were doing this awesome thing for ourselves and for everyone around us to like landscape that with sod and some trees and shrubs and stuff, and it looks really nice. So we're like, yay, this is super cool. And then we find out that it's a $14,000 unexpected fee for that. And I was like, how does that even pencil? Like, that's too big. So because the fee is designed for the permeable land, then typically you have a house that takes up a good chunk of the lot and a driveway and all this non-permeable stuff. So the actual fee that people typically pay is going to be a lot lower, even for this size of a lot, than 14 grand. So I thought, okay, well, the spirit of the law is meant to say you have X amount of permeable land that, once you've subtracted the house and the driveway, and you could potentially, irrigate that land. So I felt like the spirit of the law would be, okay, well, if we're not going to touch the scrub oak, which for me is like sacred, like don't ever mess with scrub oak, then, the spirit of the law would be like, let's just say the scrub oak is not part of the permeable land, even though technically it is, and then just charge a fee that's still $10,000, but on the part that is actually irrigated. So and Rob's summary was excellent. Not much to add there. The written agenda items do have some errors. I never ran PVC under the ground from the 1 meter of my house to the other one or anything like that. So because when the park strip in front of that property was already had sod and trees in it, and so there was already a meter. There was already the filter thing that you have for your pressurized irrigation. There was piping coming out of that, white PVC pipe coming out of that, going to a valve for a zone, and with a timer on it that was watering the park strip. So when we started doing the irrigation, we just assumed that the fee had been paid because all the infrastructure was in place. I had no idea that it hadn't been paid until it was brought to my attention. So
can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So let me clarify this. So when you bought the property, you actually bought both lots at the same time?
Correct.
And was there ever discussion from the people you bought it from that they had paid impact fee or anything?
No, they didn't mention that. And I'm not holding that against them. I don't think that was necessarily.
But you didn't find that out. And the
I didn't.
Company didn't say anything. It just basically, you thought you were buying both lots because you were hoping to maintain both lots, right?
Yeah, I've lived in Highland. I've had 2 houses in Highland. Both were built already. So I've never built in Highland. I didn't know about a impact fee that's part of the building permit process. So that was obviously, I just didn't know about it.
So your assumption is that the previous owners or whoever built the house had already paid that?
Right, and if there had not been a meter there and all this infrastructure in place, then I probably would have at least inquired with the city, like, hey, how do I get a meter here? I want to irrigate this. And they would have said, oh, yeah, here's what you got to do. And by the way, you got to pay this $14,000. And I would have said, okay, never mind, I'm not going to irrigate this.
So we're talking right now, though, about the difference of $4,475. Is that correct?
That is correct. The other thing I want to maybe clarify, because at the end of the day, I may just pay the full $14,000 if this process of getting the survey done and the amendment to the plat is so onerous and expensive that it doesn't really help. So I talked to a survey specialist, and if we can do a GPS survey, it's like $1,000. If we have to do this super fancy mega survey to the millimeter, then it's more expensive. And therefore it doesn't even pencil for me to do this. So I would just request that if we can get, and this is like a legit survey company that would do the survey, it's based on GPS, it still costs like $1,000. If we could do that and use that, then I think that works. And then the other thing is, I would just say, like, let's say it's 19,000 square feet. Let's just round it up to 19,000 of irrigated instead of 18,000, whatever. And then I pay the fee on that. And then a future owner of the lot, I would just say if they want to increase the irrigation area over 19,000, then they would have to, pay the incremental fee. The reason I say that is if you think about building on this lot, you might encroach a little bit into the scrub oak. You might actually move a little bit of the scrub oak out, but then you're putting a big house there and a driveway. So the permeable land is going to go way down based on the footprint of the house and the driveway. So ultimately the amount of irrigable or permeable land would go down. The only scenario where that would need to be increased and then the incremental fees would have to be paid is if they, for some reason, bulldozed the beautiful scrub oak and actually just made the whole entire lot grass, which I can't imagine that ever happening, so.
Anyone else have questions for the applicant?
So I just have a question for Andy, is it okay?
Yeah, you can go ahead and take a seat. I think we'll let you know if we have more. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
So if this scrub oak area, basically he does the survey and everything and it goes into a conservation area, I guess I don't understand how that works. I mean, we have conservation areas in the city. Unfortunately, we've had trouble with people encroaching into those. What safeguards do we have that'll stay conservation area? I mean, and he just talked about if there's a new owner, what they would have to do. So I guess I'd like clarification if it does go in a conservation area, what happens. Maybe Rob's best to answer that, I don't know.
Well, so I think answer two halves. Number one, the new conservation easement would be indicated on the plat. It would be restricted from construction. So if anybody did acquire the lot, etc., it would be, they wouldn't be able to build there, at least per our building permit process. But Mr. Nish has indicated correctly that if somebody actually ever did build there, there would actually be less impervious, and so the city would probably end up being in the plus, if you will, in that regard. In a more practical sense, as you've noted, that there are a number of conservation easements that have been on various people's lots, and they kind of, whether inadvertently or intentionally, I think there's, I don't know how that all happened, people have built on them, right, and have, destroyed whatever vegetation was intended to be on there. And so I guess the only other safeguard that we have is that, this has been an item of discussion that, staff's been aware of, and it is an area of the town that we're in fairly frequently because of all of our ponds and tanks and other things up in that area, and so it is an area that city staff passes fairly frequently. Now, that being said, I don't think we're staring at every little square foot of every home that we're passing, but if a major construction project was going on, we'd probably take note.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Andy, if for example, Brandon's house didn't currently exist and he was going to build a house on that lot, would you include the scrub oak when you were deciding how much his fee should be? So on any other Highland lot, how is that considered?
It's, and Rob's done a lot of research with the building department, but to my understanding, what we do on any other Highland lot, and is we just take the square footage of the lot, and then we subtract the square footage of the impervious, being the home and the home's roof and the driveway, and then assess the impact fee on the balance of the lot. You know, and I know that Rob's done quite a bit of checking with the building department. He seems to be shaking his head incorrectly that he concurs with that's how it is.
But Rob, you wouldn't normally take into account scrub oak or other vegetation that's already there.
Meaning we would not discount the fee for that.
Correct.
We would include it as
Right.
this could be watered, because there's no, while it's obviously a very beautiful thing to have, there's nothing, it's still private property. The city can't say, don't clear out that scrub oak. So someone could go in, clear it out, and put a greenhouse or, you know, something back there that they may want to do in the future. So, as Andy said, we don't look at that type of thing when assessing the impact. We just say, all right, where is your home going to be, where you subtract that off from your, you know, the impermeable surface, subtract that out of the lot, do the calculation for the remainder square footage, and then say, here's the impact fee.
Can you put
sorry.
Can you put the slide up that tells us when we can make an exception like this under X circumstances?
Yes.
Unusual circumstances. I'm having a hard time seeing this as an unusual circumstance. How would you define unusual circumstance as it's written in this code here?
Maybe fortunately or not, this is not an area of state law that they have a good definition for this. They basically say adjusted in particularized circumstances where there's more or less of an impact. And maybe I'll make an argument on both sides because I'm a lawyer, that's what I'm supposed to do. Perhaps more on Mr. Nish's side, it's unusual in the fact of we don't have very many lots in Highland that are landscaped without a home. That is actually a fairly unusual thing in Highland. We usually don't have, you know, we have lots, they get subdivided to be built on. That's why developers do it. So that is in and of itself an unusual, perhaps an unusual definition, including the fact that he's willing to put in some kind of conservation restriction. That's also an unusual characteristic. Don't have many homes that are restricted for development in that way.
You sound like an attorney.
Yes, well, that is my job. To the other fact, I think I put this in the staff report. In some regards, this is not unusual because it is much like any other lot in Highland. It's not encumbered with anything restricting on the deed. There's no wetlands. There's nothing restricting it being built. And this is why, I mean, staff's approach up until now, or I guess not until now, but our normal approach is we looked at the square footage of your lot, we say 0.51, we multiply that, and that's the number you get. Okay. So the short answer is there's not a good definition, but it is kind of left to you to decide, is there something about this that says this is different from other places where that if someone else came with a similar situation, we would say, yes, that also justifies an adjustment to our impact fees. Or is this more common with other ones where we say, why should we do it here when, you know, 10,000 other lots in Highland have paid this impact fee?
Can I ask two quick questions?
Absolutely.
I was confused about, in the packet, it mentions the $650 meter fee. And I was confused about, because it seems like if that meter's there, then somebody paid for it already.
Correct. I was working with the building department on figuring out what was outstanding on this, and I was told that still needed to be paid, and that turned out to be incorrect. The meter was installed, so that would have all been taken care of when the development was put in 05 or 03. That is an error.
Okay, my second question is, in our packet, this was listed as what's the word, Kim? Administrative item. Generally, administrative item means that we have to follow code and we don't have a lot of leeway. So can you explain to me how this is administrative and if it is, what the decision would even be?
It's an excellent question.
Thank you.
You're welcome. In terms of this being administrative versus legislative, a legislative decision is one where you have to base it on policy considerations. And you're looking at a number of factors. Administrative issues are, you're looking at what does your code say, and you're applying that code to a specific circumstance. This is administrative It's not administrative in the way land use things are, where we have a subdivision comes in and they check off the boxes, so we have to approve it. This is administrative in that we have a code that says, here's how you adjust impact fees, and you have to do it when there's unique circumstances. But it doesn't dictate that these are unique circumstances. That part is left to the council to decide. So there's a bit more discretion left to the council than, say, a subdivision or a building permit type thing. But it's still, you are applying your code to a specific situation. You're not trying to modify your code. You're trying to say, does this fit into our code such that we should make an adjustment to our impact fee?
Thank you.
One thing I found, I think that makes this unusual is that there was a previous property owner, and I guess and it's hard, we all have to do our due diligence when we purchase our properties. I mean, I found at the last minute, when I went to the title company, that I had two of the biggest pipelines in Utah going through my backyard. I mean, you just find these kind of surprises. I guess if I was buying this lot and there's a pressurized meter there, I would have assumed that one, and I think we just proved that the meter had been paid for, but I kind of think there would have been some impact fees maybe, because their plan here isn't to build on this lot, and so we usually charge all those when you build on the lot, right?
Correct.
And so I guess it probably came to it as a surprise that some of these things hadn't already been paid. And, you know, I can understand where Mr. Nish is coming from, because it's kind of like, surprise, you owe us $14,000. You know, it's interesting.
I mean, I will say, I think that would be a reasonable interpretation of unusual, that there was a lot prepared with a meter and irrigation, and yet that was not fully taken care of with the city in terms of all fees related to it. I think you could find that to be an unusual, that's within the council's discretion.
Though, correct me if I'm wrong, Andy or Rob, I mean, we put in connections to every lot in, you know, during the subdivision process, every lot has a connection because the assumption is those are going to be built on, right? And so we don't want to have to go back every single time somebody is going to do a building permit to add a connection at that point.
Correct. We have them put in the PI lines and then we stub them out to the lots when they put in the development.
But we usually don't charge the impact fees in that to someone builds?
No, we do not.
So, right. But we're going to charge impact fees even though there's no plan to build?
So typically so most of our impact fees relate, we have correct me if I'm missing one, we have a streets, we have a public safety, so police, we have culinary water,
pressurized irrigation.
And pressurized irrigation and sewer. So all of those, out of all of those, PI is the only one that isn't directly related to building. Everything else, there's only an impact when there's someone living in a lot, because there's a need for more culinary water when someone builds a home. There's a need for more streets when someone lives there and they're increasing traffic. There's a need for more police and fire because now there's someone who may need those services. Pressurized irrigation is a little unique because it doesn't care who lives there. It's about, are you using the city system for more irrigation than existed prior to your lot?
So you need to pay the impact fee.
So you need to pay the impact fee. We just typically bundle them all together at building permit, because usually it goes subdivision and then within a year, you know, someone's bought the lot and they're building out the home and it kind of all gets wrapped up together. But that's why those other three would still be, you know, if someone ever built a home there, we would still assess those other impact fees at the time. But PI, there's been an impact on the city's PI system now because a new lot is using water and requiring pumps and all of that to provide a service to that lot that didn't exist prior to 2020 or whenever.
So my next question is if indeed you have to pay the impact fee when this was landscaped, because before it was not, right?
Yes.
I understand the landscaping occurred 3 years ago, so when did the city then say you need to pay this impact fee?
We learned about it in 2022. Again, as Andy said, we don't actively patrol every home to see how they're doing landscaping. It just came up. I think we saw an unusual amount of water, or perhaps someone...
It was when we were prepping to put in the meters, actually. Our staff member noticed that landscaping had occurred here, and it was strange because it was a different lot. And so they wanted us to check to make sure that everything had been taken care of properly.
From my understanding, to answer to Councilwoman Rodella's question though, so it seems as if there was also some consideration already given to the homeowner in not charging the back fees, correct?
Correct. Staff said, all right, just start paying it now, we'll, move forward, and let's also resolve the impact fee. Often our goal is to fix non-compliance issues and work something out with residents. So that was what staff worked out.
May I ask a question or make a comment here?
If you come back up to the microphone.
Yeah, so first of all, I'm actually happy to pay the back fees. That's fine. I don't like having unpaid things like that. But the one question I have on that is the 51 cents per foot, or whatever it is, the 0.51, wasn't that lower? Like had this been done at the correct time in 2020, what was the actual number then?
Yes, we did amend, the city amended its impact fees analysis in 2022, yes. I believe.
So if it had been done at the correct time, the 14, it would have been less than 14 grand.
I think it was like 0.47 something. So, yeah. But it, over that much square footage, yes.
So you're saying
I would just ask that maybe
it'd be more amenable to you if we went back to what the impact fee was in 2020 when you did the landscaping?
Yeah, it would be lower. I don't know, maybe, what would that be, like $1,000 less, maybe, something like that. So it probably comes out in the wash, which might have been, I don't know, the way that was determined.
So we could look at this, if you paid the back amount, and then we just determine the impact fee based on the time you are now caught up to having been paid to, which is a 2020 amount, and calculated it from there, that would be a strategy I think that we could consider.
Sure, and I'm not open to whatever, and I'm even just happy to pay
that
for 12.
That strategy actually intuitively makes more sense to me.
Right.
Because it is, you weren't paying it and should have been paying it, but the impact fee went up from the time it should have been paid, so let's charge you for what it would have been if you make up that $1,400 difference.
Yeah.
And not for the meter because that had already been paid for.
Correct. Yeah.
I like that.
Okay.
I think it's fair.
Mr. Nish, staff, any other questions?
Do I get to know what the number is?
Ultimately, sir, go ahead, Rob.
I will have to confirm this, but I was looking over, the last time we did this, we had a similar question pop up, and the 2021 formula that was in place was a 43 cents per square foot. So 43 cents times 18,750, roughly the area asking to be allowed as the irrigable and excluding the rest is around $8,000 rather than closer to 10,000, so it's about a $2,000 difference.
And the best way to make a motion on this would be to set a dollar amount or to give direction to staff as to what we would like to be included and from what dates.
Give direction. We can calculate the numbers when we have the final numbers, but if you say, impose the rate in effect in 2020, require payment of back payment, and what are the other conditions, we can figure out that.
Brandon, I know you like numbers. Does that feel okay to you?
That's great, yeah.
Rob, doesn't this have to come back to council anyway for final approval? Is this kind of just more the initial?
If we do the plat amendment, that would come back to council for approval of that portion, but this would be determining whether you will allow that, whether that allows Mr. Nish to then look at whether that even makes sense as term of
I'm almost wondering if we can short circuit this and just do the 43 on the whole kit and caboodle and just be done. If you waive the fees.
So that's interesting.
Sorry.
We seem to have a motion by the applicant, which I don't think is traditionally
Breaking all kinds of protocols here.
traditionally the way that it's done. As Mayor Pro Tem, I don't know all the rules, but I don't feel comfortable with that, but thank you.
But I think those are some good ideas, if somebody wants to verbalize it on the council.
All right.
So the total, so the lot size for the plat is 27,526 square feet based on the 43 cents, which I still have to confirm. The total for the entire lot for impact fees is 11,836.18 cents.
then you would have to pay.
Which is honestly less than I would pay if I had to do the crazy surveys.
That's
and
actually the impact fee for the
all that
entire
stuff.
lot, and that would not require any type of, essentially, the adjustment you're making is to allow the rate to be in effect as of the 2020, rather than doing a
21.
splitting of the lot.
So does that also subtract the cost of the pressurized meter?
That's already been handled, we're not
Okay.
worrying about
Totally,
that.
okay.
Okay.
So that's just the impact fee, does not address, it wouldn't include any of the back usage fees. I don't know if that was something the council was concerned about. That's just the impact fee as of the 43 cents number, which was in effect a few years ago.
And then can we make it clear as well that now like this is done and nobody's gonna go to back fees later or for meters later, like this is done?
Yes, I mean, we'll have it in the city system now that this lot, impact fees have been paid on this date. So it'll be permanently associated with that lot.
Perfect, thank you, thanks. Do we have a motion from somebody other than the applicant?
It was a good motion.
This will be good practice for you.
Yes, it will.
Yes, it will.
I move that we ask the applicant to pay the back fees that were, or the,
You can also ask the attorney for a suggested motion.
yes, that would be better.
Do you want to include the monthly charges as well or not?
Yes, that those monthly charges will be paid back until the time when it was developed, which is 2020, is that right?
September of 2020.
September of 2020. And that whatever the impact fee was on that date would be assessed.
Which is approximately 43 cents, correct?
I will have to confirm the exact, but from my brief understanding, it is around 43 cents.
Perfect.
I'll second.
Is that motion okay for you over there? You're good? Okay, perfect. Then we will start with Councilmember, where are we at? Smith?
Yes.
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 And I'm a yes also. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Thanks for spending the evening. It was a good time. Okay, moving on to the approval of the Highland Traffic Calming and Pedestrian Safety Manual. We've talked about this quite a bit already. Andy, did you have anything that you would like to add?
No, council members, I have a quick summary for you on the next page if you want to see it, but you all know it pretty well. The point of, if you can just go to the next page on the, there we go. The purpose of the traffic calming manual is just simply to set up a process whereby citizens can request traffic calming be evaluated, and those requests can be evaluated against each other, and those that are of the highest and most pressing needs are addressed first. And other than that, I think we've talked about it quite a bit. We do have our consultant here with you. Have any last questions? But I'll probably be quiet from there and answer any questions.
Okay, does anybody have any questions or are we ready for a motion?
I'd like to make a comment. I really appreciate all the work from Mr. Seeger and the willingness to listen to the council. I mean, we've talked about it on several occasions, and they've met with us privately, and we've tried to, and we've worked with the staff. I think, Andy, you've had a lot of good suggestions. I think the final product is really good, much improved. I think it gives us a good set of tools and that we can help, because we've had many neighborhoods come forth and say we've got trouble with traffic. This gives us a set of tools that we can really work with the residents and help benefit them. So I support this 100%, and thank you. Thank you for all the work, and thanks to the staff for all the work on this.
Let me ask a quick question. Where are we at with the neighborhoods who have already come in and who we've already talked about? We were going to maybe fast track them a little bit. Where are we at with that?
So I haven't moved forward with any of those, just waiting for the adoption, make sure all the process was set up, and then we'll dive in on those requests. So in all candor, I was waiting for tonight's vote to then say, okay, here's our program.
So we have a temporary speed bump coming though, right?
Yeah, we have
Speed
two
table.
of them coming.
Right.
And those the initial plan is to place those on Canal as soon as they show up. And as of last council meeting, they told me 8 weeks total. and we'd been 2 weeks, so 6 weeks, so it should be about another month before they get here. Sorry, I'm
So
trying to retrace.
We'll get them out by the election.
Yes, there you go. So,
I'm going to run on speed bumps.
I've got a question on bullet point 4, where it provides an evaluation criteria through which concerned areas can be scored. I'm thinking in the scenario of thousands of dollars to do X and hundreds of dollars to paint. Is that part of the scoring criteria that you take into consideration? The more costly things may go down the list a little more when you can take care of, it's the old debt thing. You pay all your lowest debts first, and the things that you can do easily, can they get bumped up with your scoring criteria here?
So, two halves to answer. Number one, the actual scoring criteria that's in the matrix or in the back of the manual really looks at the highest need, and it scores it kind of a red, yellow, green, if you will. And so the idea being all those that are red you get at right quick. The yellows you get to as you can, and the green are probably, not too bad, and some of them may not need any treatment, others may need it, but they might be a little down the list. That being said, as city staff, we want to use the budgets that we can to accomplish the most that we can, and so there certainly will be a little bit of an art form of implementing it, meaning say if we have $50,000 to work with and we've spent $45,000 and the next one in line is $20,000, we'll probably look below that. Is there one wing squish, can squeeze in for that extra $5,000, so to speak. So I think that there is some ability on the staff side to still have some discretion with how do we use the money that we've got to the fullest. So I will say that in this current budget year, we don't yet have a designated line item for traffic calming. We would anticipate that in the future, but this current year, it's going to be kind of all part of the overall roads improvement funding, right? Because that's the only funds that we have, but we'll, do all we can to use those to the best benefit of the citizens and make those wise decisions.
And Aaron,
oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Aaron, where are we at we had talked about ones that had already been decided using open space funds before that open space fund was dissolved. Is there any update on when we'll be talking about those items?
The intention is for that to come back on the October 17th meeting, because we were hoping, so I believe the item in question you're talking about is Park Drive in the Viewpoint subdivision. That we are hoping will have gone to Alpine City Council by then, so that we'll have a clear direction as to what's potentially happening there. And so we were going to bring it back then.
And there was also Wild Rose that we had appropriated money from the Open Space Fund for as well, I believe.
Okay, yes, so Wild Rose, we have some, the money in there to be put towards their park. And so yes, the open space, let's see, we left the balance, right, Tyler? But we've just changed all of the expenses to be the general fund, correct?
That's correct.
So I just want to make sure any things that were outstanding in that open space fund budget
We would
are taken care of.
absolutely recommend that before this budget year is done, anything that you are intending to spend out of the open space fund be spent. I mean, it doesn't all have to be spent, but if it's something strange like these circumstances, do it now before it gets forgotten.
Thank you. Thanks, Tyler. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
All right. Do we have any more questions, or we could also entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion. I move that the City Council approve the resolution adopting the Highland Traffic Calming and Pedestrian Safety Manual and the associated $25 application fee.
I'll second that.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second by Councilmember Smith. Let's start with you, Councilmember Campbell.
Yes.
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 And that is unanimous, and we can move on to the item is canceled because we had write-in candidates for the election. Okay, so we can move on to the sale of additional Wimbledon space, open space property. And this is also Andy, and then this is a public hearing as well. So we'll hear a presentation by Andy, questions, and then a public hearing.
Council members, on July 18th, the council again revisited Wimbledon, and prior to that time, the council had designated a number of parcels as orphan parcels and made them eligible for sale. On July 18th, the council again looked at Wimbledon and looked at 4 specific parcels and gave staff direction, go ahead and prepare those parcels and bring those back for review by the council for consideration of sale. So so my map looks great up on the screen, but it looks pretty good on your monitors. And I apologize to those in the audience, but the 4 parcels are those indicated in red. And we do have at least one property owner here tonight that's relative to those, but we do know that at least I've been told that parcel 2, that the citizen would like to buy those. We know for sure that parcel 3 and parcel 4 would like to buy their parcels, and so we commissioned a survey and have the detailed survey completed for each of those, and so your motion to approve tonight would be per the detailed surveys that were prepared, and we did meet with Mr. Hafen in the field and look at his specific parcel, and then Mr. Timothy his was emailed to him, and his is Mr. Timothy's parcel 3, and Kelly is the one who was working with the owner with parcel 2, and so they may indeed be in the audience. I just don't know them, and that's possible, but I wasn't able to reach out to them just because I don't have that relationship, and I wasn't sure who they were. But I believe per comments of Kelly that this was what they had expected, and so these 4 parcels are in your packet and would be part of your motion to then designate these for sale. I will make one clarification for you just for being on the minutes. So when it comes to Mr. Hafen's parcel, which is parcel 4, the council already voted to allow the sale in his backyard, if you will, along the trail. But when we met with him, his request was, can we have the surveyor combine my parcel into the parcel that was eligible for sale in the backyard with this new parcel that's on the north of his area into one description so that he could just buy one thing and it would be a little simpler. And so while you're designating all of parcel 4, for eligible for sale, you've already done half of parcel 4, if you will. But that was per his request to make it simpler for him and title companies and purchases, etc.
Thank you. Any questions for Andy before we open up the public hearing? No? Do you have a question?
Yeah, I guess my question is, so we're talking about selling these parcels off. What price are we putting on that?
This year it's $4.71.
Did we have to vote on that?
My understanding is it was calculated by the formula that it would come to the council and we'd vote on it. I have no recollection of voting on that fee.
The council voted on the value this year in January of this year. Stephanie actually sent me the resolution from this year because that's what
Did we
I
vote
wanted to
for
verify.
that?
So
Why don't I remember that?
Every January, we set a new price.
Right, I know we do that.
So yeah, this resolution was passed on January 3rd of 2023, and it was designating the purchase property, or the purchase value for 2023 as $4.71 per square foot.
And that was based on the formulary.
Yeah, based on the
formulary,
average,
not the
based on
formulary.
the average county assessed values of the sampled properties, and then you take a quarter of it.
And when was his application put in?
I do not know that answer. Kelly would know that. I am sorry. I'm a poor fill-in for Kelly today.
You guys are all super great, but we miss Kelly. I'm sure she's watching, wishing
Yes.
she were here.
Yes, I'm sure
she's
she is.
not.
I'm sure she is.
No,
She's watching,
I
wishing.
think she is.
But
We do have, looks like Mr. Haven's here. Should we go ahead and open up the public comment then? we
And
get
maybe
any
Mr.
questions?
Haven could answer
Exactly.
that question, because I think he's been trying to buy this property for some time.
Seems it's been a minute.
So, Mark Hafen, Wimbledon subdivision. As Councilman Bills and Rodella can attest, I've had them to my home and, well, to my property many times, trying to figure this out. Starting back in 2020, well, I don't know exactly how long ago, but I was working at the same time that Edwards, who were my next door neighbors, who had already purchased, because they didn't have the same issues I did. So I've been trying to purchase it and do the same thing they did. They purchased theirs in December of 2022, so what, 9 months ago, 8 or 9 months ago. I have to admit, when Andy sent me the email about the 471, I was a little bit shocked. I didn't realize it had gone up that high. So I called my neighbor, Margot Edwards, and asked her what they paid for the property. And she got back to me and she said it was $314 in 2022, December of 2022. We've been working on it the same time frame that they have. I just had those extenuating circumstances because of that north end of my property that comes around the side of my house that wasn't available at the time. So my request would be that I could be grandfathered in basically to the same price that my neighbor got and that I've been working towards this whole time. It's just I've been waiting for this side to happen. And in the meantime, an increase has happened while I've been waiting, which I didn't have any control over
And the bottom line is you wanted to get both pieces at the same time.
Yeah.
Because you could have went ahead and bought the one in the back for $314, right?
Yes, I could, and I could have. And the difference is I don't know if this makes any difference or not, but I didn't want two small parcels on, and having to pay taxes on my home and then two small parcels on top of that. And in fact, I don't know if I can, but I'm hoping to go to the county once this is done and combine all of it. I don't know if that's even realistic or not, but.
I don't think so.
On that, it's actually pretty easy to do.
Okay, which I've never done that before. But so my hope is that I can be carried into the same dollar amount that I've been trying to purchase. I mean, I wish I could go back to when it was $1.80 when we first started this, but
You find $3.14 to be reasonable because
that's what I was planning on. That's the dollar amount I'm planning, and quite frankly, it's about it was a significant difference from the 314 to the 430.71, 471.
Yeah, I'll support the 314 because I think the intent was always to buy it, except for some of the mitigating circumstances here. So
thank you.
I support the 314.
Thank you.
Me too.
I would be interested to know, because these four are combined into one motion, if the other three, when they put their applications in as well, maybe we could continue the public hearing. Or do you know that off the top of your head?
I'm going to confess.
There's no confessions needed.
I don't know that I could find that for you in a timely manner.
That's okay.
I know that Mr. Timothy, I went to Mr. Timothy's house with him last year during calendar year 2022. So I believe that he has been working on that for that same time, but I do not know where in a timely manner to find the information on parcel 1 or parcel 2.
That's okay.
I simply know from conversation with Kelly that the owner that's adjacent to parcel 2 has expressed interest to her in buying that parcel. But I know very little about parcel 1. Kelly had those two. Parcel 1 kind of, to my knowledge, came along for the ride, so to speak. If we were going to sell parcel 2, why wouldn't we sell parcel 1? If that makes sense.
Right.
Yep, thank you.
I think one thing too, in some ways, this is almost a new application because council had already looked at this subdivision, made a decision and said, no more kind of a thing. And Mr. Timothy's part of his was an opportunity, and at the time he had turned us down for the reasons he stated. And so this is almost a new situation in a way, right? A new application because council asked us to look at this again, right? You had already made a decision. You said, look at this again, and is there anything else we can do? And I think I can understand kind of the argument behind Mr. Timothy's. I would just be careful. If we look at new subdivisions again, how often are we going to have to go back to an old price? If that's a precedent you want to set, council, I think just be conscious of that in your decision.
Sure, but if he waited till after January 1st, it may be cheaper.
It's true.
That's true, because I think property
That's true.
valuations
It
have
very
dropped.
likely could.
There's been discussion in this neighborhood forever, and I think the mayor and staff brought all of this to the council in 2022. A lot of these things, including the piece in the back. I think that's a big jump in valuations last year. They've actually come down. My property tax in the city dropped, which is interesting. Of course, the school district is always going forward, but I would support the 314. I think there's kind of some mitigating circumstances here, and it would be okay. And I think as a council, we do set the price, but that was a big jump in price, and now it's probably going to be less next year anyway. So I'd make an exception here.
We still have a public hearing open, so is there anybody else who would like to comment? No? Then we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to council for discussion or a motion.
Just for clarification, the 314 applies to just partial 4 then?
I think you'll have to apply to all 4 partial.
All 4, okay.
Yeah.
Can we have it just applied for when they made the application? So, I mean, he made it last year. I'm not quite sure when the other parcels applied for it.
Mr. Timothy applied for it earlier, I think.
So can we just base it on when the application was?
Yeah, I have knowledge, personal knowledge, from visits from Mr. Timothy, which is parcel, I lost my map, but, parcel 3 is Mr. Timothy, and so he had me there at his house in calendar year 22, so I know he was expressing interest at that time, in that. So on the same, if you're going to give Mr. Hafen the 314, I would think it's fair to give Mr. Timothy. I have less knowledge, as you know, as I've, even though I shouldn't confessed that I don't know much about parcel 1 and 2 and their owners and their intents, and I apologize about that. We feel the loss of Kelly's knowledge on some of these things very often. Here's another one.
But we could make the motion the price based on when they applied, the year they applied. And you don't have to confess to Mayor Pro Tem because she's not the...
That's right, I have no authority.
So if we say the year that they applied, does that apply to the parcel in which you were out there? Is it Mr. Timothy?
Mr. Timothy, yeah. He
Did he technically
requested-
apply or you requested? Okay.
Yeah, and it depends on what you're going to define as applied.
That's what I'm wondering.
Because he actually, if you want to go way back to the election in 2021, Mr. Timothy was actually he emailed the mayor and I the very next day saying, okay, since the election failed, what are we going to do? I still have these concerns. I still would like to buy a part of that, and that conversation was like the day after the election. But whether he actually applied for the sale or was waiting for it to kind of be worked out, I can't say. Because Kelly always received all those applications.
If you remember, we had a period of time where we asked for applications from everyone throughout the city, right? Anybody who wanted to buy open space. And then at that time we went through, did a quick subdivision by subdivision, decided. And so maybe that's the consideration, right? That when they applied then, that was all at one time. I don't know if all 4 property owners applied at that point. It's possible that they didn't. And so if that's the application date we're going by, then if they hadn't applied, I would say it's the price for 2023. But if that's what council wants to do.
But we could put that into the motion, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I ask one question, just in terms of whatever price we have? We've done this before with other ones. We usually have a date by which they at least have to enter into the contract, not that we have to close the sale, because sometimes that drags on for a bit, but at least enter the purchase agreement. Does the council want to set a limit on when that needs to occur by?
We've oftentimes set a year limit, but what do you recommend?
Up to you. I would say Kelly often facilitates those contracts. We're going to do it. We're just not quite as up to date on as she would be. So, a period of at least 6 months would be good for us. If you want to extend it longer, that'd be up to you.
I imagine people would want to make this decision here now, because if they want to landscape and do things, they want to do it in the spring, so.
That's the idea. And once they're in the contract, if it takes longer to close, that's not on them, that's on us and the title company. It's more of, we want them to agree to actually sign the contract, say, yep, we're going to buy it, and we lock in all the price and all of that, and start the process of closing. And that process, what we'd ask to be done within perhaps 6 months or so. And then after that, we'll just go after the normal valuation, unless the council feels a longer period is appropriate.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Yeah, I move that the city council approve the resolution designating the specified parcels as orphan properties within the Wimbledon subdivision, thereby allowing for the sale of the properties to the adjacent property owners, noting that as it pertains to parcel 4, the city will retain the sewer easement shown on the survey as an encumbrance to the land as a condition of the property sale. I move that we apply the,
Purchase fee.
Purchase fee at the date that the applicant applied for this. What was the other one?
How long to execute?
Oh, and
the
6
purchase
months
agreement?
to execute the purchase agreement.
So even though that was kind of an epistle, I will second it.
Perfect. We have a motion and a second. Let's start with you, Kim.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. That motion also, yes. We have a question, clarification? That was a motion by Kim and a second by Councilmember Smith.
I know it's rare, but it's true.
And are you good with the epistle? Perfect.
Okay, great.
All right, on to the general plan update request. Jay, it's your time to shine. Like, this is your big moment.
I'm super excited, guys.
Yeah, I can tell.
I am really happy to bring to you a low pressure item, just discussion, talking about general plan update. Super nice. All right. So about a month ago, I brought to you, put it on your radar that we would be updating the general plan this year. It's been quite a while since we last did that, and money was allocated in the FY 2024 budget for a general plan update. Our intent is to partner with a firm that specializes in general plan updates and will be selected through an open bidding process. Request for proposals, also known as an RFP, document has been prepared by staff, and it has been reviewed by Planning Commission, and now we are bringing it to you on the City Council to get your feedback prior to us releasing it for bidding by these many qualified firms out there. So the Planning Commission has reviewed the RFP and given their feedback, and you now have an opportunity to provide feedback on the document either now at the meeting or by email by September 26th. And then the RFP will be posted on September 28th on the Utah Procurement website, and then it will close on November 1st. So I'm happy to take any feedback you have now, or if you want to take a week to look it over. Aaron, why are you smiling at me? Why are you smiling?
Don't smile, Aaron.
So,
thank you.
Thank you. One thing I did want to point out that we got for Planning Commission feedback was some of their comments I didn't incorporate in the document because they were more along the lines of things that you would want to bring up and discuss with potential, firms that you would want to partner with in the interview process. And so I do want to go over the fact that, and it does outline in the RFP, that there will be an opportunity for the selection committee that will consist of council members, staff, and Planning Commission members to go over interview them, ask them questions, make points. Do you have the ability to do this? What is your experience, your track record, doing this, whatever might be important to you. So we may not include those in the document itself, but there will be plenty, ample opportunity for you to bring that up with the finalists.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate the extra week to look at the document. Anybody have any questions for Jay? He would like questions and comments.
Good job.
Thank you.
Good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Think we're good with that then. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes.
Could we have a little break?
Yes, that would be great. Take a break for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, back at 9:40.
That's
Okay.
3 minutes.
Well, yeah, that's 1 minute. Okay, 9:40. I'm not so good with time. That's like an actual clock over there. 9:45.
Brought forward after having met with the individuals who live along Alpine Highway. So council members, please correct me if I get anything wrong. Plus, we do have, as I talked about your proposal with staff, we had a few follow-up questions that we wanted some clarification on. Can you move forward for me, Brooklyn? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll take it.
No. So the proposal is as follows. $100,000 that the city would set aside as grant funding for the property owners along Alpine Highway fence. This number came to be because it's about 25% of a bid that the homeowners got to replace this fence. Ultimately, we wanted to do it fairly based on square footage, not necessarily, just divide it equally, because some people have a lot more fence than others. So that's the approximate square footage number, about $22 per square foot that individuals would be eligible for. And it would be a reimbursement grant, so that we know that the money is going towards the fence. In order to receive the grant from the city, the homeowners, they contract or they do the work themselves. So the city isn't doing anything, it's the homeowner's responsibility. They do a survey prior to the installation of the fence and get a fence permit, and acknowledge that moving forward, they understand this is the homeowner's fence, the city has no more responsibility for this, and that it would be installed in the next year. So we know that this year it's probably too late to get a fence contractor out, but use all of next season to make it happen. Did I summarize that correctly, council members?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the consensus. I think you did a good job.
Okay.
Can I make a comment, or you?
Yes, I have some questions that I need clarification from on that, but I'm happy to wait on those.
So one of the members or citizens that live along that fence. So let me just give some background, because we have people that are running for election in here, some of the write-ins. But so for years, the Alpine Highway fence, which consists of some brick pillars and a wood fence, was put in by the developer and different things, and is in sore need of repair. The problem is over the years, there has been a lot of confusion about who owned the fence. So many times the citizens that lived along there would come to the city and say, hey, we want to do something to fix it up, and they would be told, oh no, the city owns it. Sometimes the city did some repair work, but it kind of has been kind of in a stasis situation. And I know from council to council, in the first council I was on, I remember Mayor Ritchie saying in a meeting, well, the homeowners own that fence. But yet, with the turnover in staff and that, there's always been confusion. And so our feeling when we've talked about it, or at least my feeling, and I think Councilwoman Bills agrees with me, that I think we have kind of an obligation to kind of help out with this, just because in many ways the citizens have been misled. My feeling is it's got to be repaired. There are sections of that fence that are falling down, especially the wood part. I think the $100,000 is significant funds from the city coffers, basically, but this is one of the most traveled by sections of the city, and I think it would be great to have a nice, attractive fence along there and still kind of be fair to the citizens, because I think, there have been comments saying, well, it's theirs and so they need to fix it, but it's been so confusing because we've been telling them for years that it's ours, and so now that it needs to be fixed, it's kind of too easy to say, oh, it's yours, So I think this is a nice compromise, and I think there could be some further discussion about exactly what the fence is. it would be really nice to have it similar all the way, but does it have to be a concrete wall? Not necessarily. It could be some other things, but I think if it's consistent and the people are willing to do it, because I think, and we have one of the citizens that lives there, and I think there's been lots of emails and lots of discussion with the people. I talk to these people a fair amount because they're neighbors and things, and so I think the consensus is people would be happy if they got some help from the city and willing to kind of work together. I don't know, maybe we can have the applicant say, I don't know what you're feeling.
Yeah, I think you explained it well. Erin, do you have any questions?
Yes. And Councilmember Smith alluded to the first one. As a part of this process, do you want to have a unified theme standard along Alpine Highway? Currently, if they chose to move forward at this time, they just have to put up something that qualifies as a theme wall, not necessarily the same type all along. There are a few different varieties of things that qualify as a theme wall. So if we want it to be unified, which some sections of our city, right, it is currently now. Maybe it's in disrepair, but it is unified.
It is unified.
But if you go along 6000 West, there is no unification there, right? So do you care enough about this to do so? And if so, what do you want to adopt a unified standard? That's the first question. The second question has to do, what side do you want? Are we okay with them working from either side of the fence, right, along the city side or along the homeowner side? There's pros and cons to each, and costs associated with each, frankly, we wanted some clarification if the city has a preference, or the council, excuse me, and then I guess any final changes to what has been outlined.
So let me just give my opinion. The wood part of the fence that people could take down in an afternoon by themselves, pretty much. I've been told that. The problem is the brick pillars. And I think the brick pillars may need to come down. I mean, and some people that live along there, the brick pillars could come down through their property, but may do an incredible amount of damage to their property to get in and access it. The access is a little better along the Alpine Highway. What we don't want to happen is to have damage to city property. And so my feeling is I would probably allow them to approach that if it's impossible from the other side, but just with kind of a written guarantee that you will replace any sprinklers you break or any damage you do, replace it to what it's been. But I think it'd be hard to take some of those brick pillars down through some people's yards without really damaging their yard. So I don't know. I think there's a compromise here, personally.
I agree, and I think it's doable from the city side. It will be more burdensome to them in that they have to then hire a fence company who will be bonded through UDOT because they have to do traffic control that way. But I absolutely agree. You know, they would have to guarantee that they'll fix anything on our side, and if they can get a fence contractor who agrees to those, I think it's a doable thing.
And we do have, I don't think, an official representative of the neighborhood. He's been very involved in the conversations. Did you have anything that you would like to add? Do you want to come ahead? State your name and your address.
Yeah, Nate Woodbury, 5348 Julianne Place. So one discrepancy, if we can go back a couple slides, on the cost per square foot, when we talked as a neighborhood committee with a couple of the council members, we talked about this being a big project, and with the budget being so significant, the proposal was, what if we do this in thirds, a third each year for the next 3 years? And so if we had 100,000 from the city that would go towards the first year, it's just going towards the first third. We've done a poll, and there's about 25%. We could probably get it up to that third that would be ready to do that within the next year. But with that dollar per square foot being $21.78, that's significantly less than what we've talked about. It's basically cut the price in three. If we're talking about this is just a one-time thing, $100,000 for the entire 31 houses, versus if we do a third per year. So that's really what we were hoping for.
You're the one that presented the bid, though. And there was a bid of, what, 400?
It came to like, if I have to look it up, but it's something like 451,000
Right.
for the precast concrete through Olympus. Yeah.
And the reason we came up with a linear foot is because some people have long portions.
The per linear foot is great, but where, if you take that 2178, that's as if we were going to do the entire stretch of the 31 houses, and that the city was going to contribute 100,000 towards that, which is, you know, a small percentage, a 25% or 20%-ish. But if we, it was your proposal that we actually do this over 3 years in hopes that we would get.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to that. I didn't know where the 2024 came in because I.
That's the first time I've seen that.
That's the first time I've actually seen it too. But at the same time, I think we have to be careful because I don't think the city's got the money to put in $300,000, $100,000 a year for a $450,000 fence. It would be great if we did, and I would support it if we did, but I'm not sure if we've got the funding, nor can we get a consensus on the council to do that. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, and I'm fully appreciative of all the work that you do for our city. That idea that I'm presenting to you was the one that you gave to us. That idea was what you suggested. And, you know.
Well, no, I suggested over 3 years, the 2024 deadline. That's kind of, you know, this is kind of the first I've heard about that.
So I do have a very significant length.
I suggested that the city pay $300,000 towards the fence, and maybe we miscommunicated.
Do you remember, Brittany, what we discussed?
No, I was under, because if the city paid $300,000 of the $400,000 fence, and that's basically the city paying 3/4 of the fence cost, which was not my understanding of what we would do. It's possible we talked about the $100,000, and that would be over the 3 years, but not $100,000 per year. But I think
what was discussed is $100,000 would be voted on for this year, and then next year it would be another vote to come for another $100,000 depending on availability.
So one thing that we have to be really careful of is we can't obligate future councils to anything, and so I would hate to make any kind of we can't make any kind of a decision that obligates a future council. But what I would like to hear, we've had a lot of discussions with you, and you're welcome, of course, to contact the other council members also. I would like to hear kind of maybe their thoughts about what we've come up with. Do you have anything else that because I'm not sure a back and forth is going to be helpful at this point.
On the topic of the theme wall, I'm really for that idea. I love the consistency. It's what makes that street beautiful. And so the only way I've thought of that would make that possible is if certain options were approved. Basically saying you qualify for this reimbursement if it meets these requirements. And so if certain requirements were, and I'm flexible to what that is. I don't have any, I mean, I put in precast concrete, but there's several options throughout the city that look wonderful.
So, you know, all things we do are kind of compromise. And I did bring up the 3-year thing and kind of maybe refunding the fund. I don't remember saying $100,000 a year, so I think we've miscommunicated a little bit on that. I'd be happy to spread it out some, but the problem is that we're going to have to get a consensus of the whole council and the mayor and everybody to do this because we're spending city funds. And so I think the 100,000 is probably doable. I just don't know if we're moving it up. Do you see what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's just, if we had all the money in the world, it would be easy, but we don't. You know.
Do we have comments from the other council members?
I'm concerned about the math. 2178 per linear foot, and $100,000 is 4,500 feet. What are the linear feet of the fence that's existing in those 31 homes? It seems like it's more like 2,000. Is it really 4,581, whatever that math works out to me?
I'm sorry, I'm trying to find the previous meeting where we had laid out the linear feet, unless you happen to remember, Andy. I thought that's how I had done that.
It's close to 5,000. If you just take
it is close to 5,000?
If you just take a straight length on Google Earth, It's about 6,000 feet actually, but you know, there's a number of streets and other things.
Well, yeah, there's gaps in it, but I measured it, my car is 4/10 of a mile.
I think it's pretty close to 5,000 feet of fence.
Okay, okay, as long as the math is
I don't have any
right.
reason to say the 4,500, whatever was quoted, isn't accurate, but you know, it's pretty darn close.
Okay, okay. By the way, I'm 100% feel it should be a theme wall that's consistent all the way down. It's been the hallmark of Highland driving down there, but one of the questions I would ask is how does this then, if we do this, how does it, what happens when Tippino's highway fences, which are in far more disrepair than this is, those homeowners come forward, they say we want a nice theme fence through here and we want the city to help pay for it. Where are we with setting a precedent?
I think it's a fair question. Kim?
I'm a firm believer that if we don't give correct information, and that the homeowners believed one thing and were told that thing, that we need to make amends in some way or another. So I like this idea of 100,000 city grant fund available. I also like your question, Ron, of are we setting precedents here? And I really hope we haven't told any other fence owners that their fences are city fences and that we are supposed to maintain them, and we deny fence permits based on that incorrect knowledge.
The good news is, I hope so as well, Councilmember Rodella. And a couple months ago, Council approved a change to the ordinance to very clearly make it that theme walls are the developers / homeowners in the future, not the cities.
And that's what they have been since this one. Yeah.
Yes, this one was just a question, because it's been so long, and it was multiple developments, right? It wasn't one development that put it in. So, unfortunately, I, myself included, have given people incorrect information on this because I understood at the time it was ours.
So my question is, if you mind if I interrupt there, Mayor?
I'm done.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you.
And my question is are we open? I would really like kind of a theme as a whole, but are we open to have a different fence than a concrete fence? So a concrete fence is the most lasting, but it's the most expensive. There might be a better type of fence or a cheaper one that's still very beautiful and durable. And I think we probably ought to open it up to the residents and just say, do you want to look at some other options? But maybe with the idea of keeping it consistent. Does that make sense?
Erin, what kind of direction are you looking for from us tonight?
Can you go to my next slide, Brooklyn? I think I got what I need, because if I'm hearing you correctly, you are interested in a unified look. And so we do need to do some more research as to what, and bring back recommendations, right, as to what does that look? What would we recommend council adopt there? Anybody else have any questions either way on the which side of the fence? I think we got let them do either side, but understanding the caveats that we've pointed out here. So if there's no other questions, I think we have enough to start working with the homeowners along that section to kind of finalize this a little bit more and bring back recommendations on what we need for a theme, what we would ask council to adopt as a theme wall.
And I...
Can I ask a question, please?
Well, hey, Mayor.
Hey, I'm still awake. I'm tired, I'm still awake. Hey, I have a question. Council, you feel like we're going to cause problems this year, but you have 31 homeowners. I ain't worried about the financial burden that's coming. Might feel that's going to do a theme wall to go put it in, and you might not tackle the financial theme. I just think we have to consider some concerns there.
And that's absolutely true, but I think if the city's putting forth a lot of funds, that we should have a say a little bit in the fence. But I'm willing to do options. And the other thing is I think we should, as we discussed, if they want to do it in 3 sections, rather, if it's pretty consistent, I don't have any problem with that. And maybe, in the future we might have more money, but I think we'll be able as a council to agree on the 100,000 to start. Do you see what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it depends, we might have a windfall. I doubt it, but it'd be nice.
Is it okay if I make another comment? I did find the quote that I had, and the estimated linear footage was 4,922 feet, so it's somewhere around there probably. And the quote that I got was $429,196.34.
That's a concrete fence, right?
That was from Olympus Precast. Doesn't include the hauling away of dirt but it includes the digging, the cement, the fence.
Can you clarify, what does it not include the hauling away of?
When they excavate dirt so they can put in the footings, that didn't include the price to haul away.
But hauling away the old material, it does include? Like the old fence?
No. And what an idea that we discussed, and I don't know if we were just kind of exploring, is if the dump, if the city has access to rights to the dump, that we could kind of use those resources to save costs on hauling away, or did you find anything on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, the Harris Fine Arts Center is in a landfill over in Fairfield now from BYU. So there's a lot of, we have a C&D landfill from the North Point Waste Management. From the transfer station of the dump, they take it over to Fairfield into the landfill there. So, I mean, there's a place for it to go, obviously, and as a citizen of Highland, you have a right to get it down to the transfer station. So the question we had, and we kind of have been sensing, again, here's this compromise, is would the staff be able to do this, and the kind of consensus, we don't have enough staff to do it. So again, this is something for you to take back to your neighborhood and say, can we kind of work? Is there a way? I mean, the wood fence is no problem. You could take it down tomorrow, right? It's the pillars that's a problem for people. So maybe there's some good ideas and things you can bring back to the council. Does that make sense? Because right now, it's really going to be hard for the staff. And when we priced it out, it would cost the city $100,000. Isn't that right, Andy? To demolish what's there.
Our bid from our contractor was somewhere in the $150,000 range. At least our price check contract that we had for the demo.
So I think that's what we have as a starting point. I think Councilmember Smith and I did our best to come up with something that we thought would be palatable to the rest of council and a good compromise with the neighborhood. But of course, this isn't a vote or anything tonight. So we, of course, always welcome more ideas and more comments as we kind of work towards a final solution.
So Aaron, it would be good to get feedback from the council, and it'd be great to get feedback from this neighborhood, and they may come up with a better theme wall solution that you may be less expensive, you know.
And I have an idea based on if we weren't able to get funding from the city, because we did all of our fencing and precast concrete except for that one section. And now that it's come down to this, I basically have been, I don't wonder if we're going to get help or not. If not, what I was going to do is keep the brick pillars as is, repair them, and then take down the wood fencing and build like a wall, like I'm framing a wall for a house, weatherproof it and stucco it, because I got that idea when I was driving down Canal Boulevard, and on the east end, there's some precast concrete that the panels look like they're stucco. And so I thought I could probably DIY that myself and just do one section at a time, and that would save a lot of costs. And so, you
could still use the 2163 per linear foot.
Yeah, that would go a lot further towards that type of a project versus the precast. That's probably what I would do if the budget where the city was contributing about 25%.
So I think we would love to hear about those kinds of ideas and creative solutions if you want to send those out to us. And then we can bring this back.
So you're saying it would look a lot like the east side?
That would be my objective, is to have it be just as secure and strong, just a DIY, because it would be framed, it would have OSB, weatherproof. That was kind of my idea.
We appreciate that.
As long as it had a specific look, I could understand hey, if it looks like this fence, or if it, so.
Okay, great ideas. Thank you. Thank you. Aaron, right now it is 10:13. We're supposed to end our meetings at 10 o'clock. So my question for you is, of the remaining items, what can we hold for another meeting and what needs to be discussed tonight?
I don't think anything is time sensitive, Madam Pro Tem.
Can I bring up just one thing?
Yes.
So I've been approached by Mr. Armstrong, who wants to move in to the country club neighborhood close to where John Dougal lives in the golf course. Apparently, as he went to move into that area, he wanted to expand his house and discovered that there's a corner of his property which is owned by the city. He's had it surveyed and looked at pretty carefully. Apparently, there's no utilities or anything there. And people in the neighborhood were kind of surprised that the city owned that piece of property. It's Mr. Lynn Armstrong, if I remember correctly. And he needed, I guess he was told by the staff he needed somebody on the council to kind of be a sponsor. But I would like to maybe just kind of work with staff and him and see if there's a way that if the city doesn't need that property and different things, if he could purchase it. So it sounds like you know more about that.
I spoke with him personally about it. Jay and I both did. We had a meeting with him about it. This is kind of touching on a topic we've had we kind of had a process of we brought neighborhoods to you for open space disposals. Kelly is gone and we're trying.
Quit saying that.
For the time being, Kelly is not here.
She
and that
will
has kind
always
of
be with us
thrown a
until
wrench
she's
into
not.
us moving forward with that. So there's still people requesting certain properties be sold to them. He was one such individual. How does the council want us to proceed? Do you still want to go back to the case by case, or should we still proceed with the neighborhood by neighborhood?
The neighborhood by neighborhood was open space neighborhoods, I believe.
Yes.
And this is one piece in a neighborhood that's not open space. It's an old neighborhood that was created before the city was.
Yes.
And there's some funny little piece of property here that the city owns and doesn't need to own it. And so it's kind of an exception.
So staff, of course, we'd be happy to look at this and say, we can do the normal process. You'd have to survey it out, but we can bring it back as an orphan parcel if the council would like us to do that.
If I can add, there's a little bit of complexity with Mr. Armstrong's parcel in that it's really weird because it's like it was platted one way and built another way. And so while the road didn't get built on his house, on his corner, it actually got built on the properties of a couple of neighbors across the street a little bit. So the road infringes on their properties, if you will. So it's kind of an interesting situation. It's one of those, it's years and years and years later, obviously, and how and why and what,
And it's a pre-city
nobody
issue.
knows, but yeah, in order to really make good decisions with what's associated with this parcel, you'd really have to do a survey to survey where the property lines are versus where the physical road lies, because like I say, even looking at the aerial photo, and you can't trust the aerial photos completely, it looks like there's portions of the sidewalk that are actually on his parcel, the parcel that he owns, and let alone the stuff that's across the street on the neighbors. Like say, if you look at the neighbors to more of like the west of him, the streets on portion of their property. So it's not that I'm opposed to taking action on this, that's not my point. My point is just that this would be one that we'd want to survey and just have certainty.
So who does the survey? The city? Because he indicated he'd already had a survey done.
I haven't seen a survey from him, Jay, unless you have. I just saw him kind of just pull stuff.
He said it was just done. I haven't seen it.
If he's
yet.
done it, he hasn't shared it with the city yet.
He might have done it as part of, he was looking to do a construction, and he was trying to fit his additions within the setback rules we have, and he might have surveyed to get points out to say, okay, how far up can I go against my property lines?
So who does he need to meet with again? Because Kelly's not here. Would it be the assistant administrator or Andy? Who would he? What can I tell him? What do I need to tell him to do? Can he just come meet with you again and say, I've got my survey?
Yep.
What do I need to do?
If he comes in on like a Tuesday and makes an appointment to come in on a Tuesday by contacting Rob or I, we can work through the process with him.
Okay, and just then bring it back to council. Would that be okay with everybody else?
If the council supports us doing that, we'll work on that.
Brooklyn, will you jump forward? Future meetings, well, actually, it's on your agenda, Mayor and Council, future meetings. Except Planning Commission next week got canceled. There was nothing on the agenda. Our next, quote unquote, next, City Council Planning Commission meeting is October 3rd. That's it.
Okay. So with that, we can take a motion to adjourn.
I moved it, we adjourn.
You're never going to beat Scott.
You're never going to beat me.
You're never. We're going to need a second.
I second that.
Perfect. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you.